typically go together.
No, they don't. It historically does. Guns and butter. It doesn't work.
And then to the point Carl was making, the story in the journal points out that none of the candidates, therefore, are exactly what.
Now it's about Rick Bader's donations to candidates who might have been, say, opposed to MAGA, Nikki Haley, Buttigieg. I've only seen 2-year break-evens, Jim, but they're up almost 50 bits from December.
Look, it's not going that way. We clearly have two economies, so I can tell you that the way you would come at it if you were the president was housing and the inability of the middle class to be able to afford housing. That way you don't have to talk about healthcare. If you talk about healthcare, that's Medicaid and
that was quite something yesterday, and in terms of the performance of the. We'll keep an eye.
That was Oz. That was Oz putting the wood to companies that he thinks have been historically checked. But go back for Oz. Oz has been behind it. He's understood where the inflation is in the system better than anybody, and he knew that these guys were part of what could bankrupt Medicare.
That would well be the case. What the companies will say, and I'm sure you'll start to hear that chorus as you move from getting the initial price increase, which was virtually nothing for Medicare Advantage, to what it ends up being. They will say, we're going to deliver less service, fewer services, exactly. You're going to get less as a senior. And so I see how that debate
historically the numbers going up.
I was expecting 5%. They got 0.09.
Yeah. Well, because Oz doesn't think that it's the right thing for the taxpayer, the right thing for Medicare. By the way, Oz, correct. I don't think under either regime we would think that Medicare is doing great.
Medicare Advantage.
Medicare Advantage. Yeah, it comes from Medicare. Medicare Advantage is very expensive. And David, when you ever get to the point where you need it, you got to pay. You got to pay because when you get a $280 bottle of cortisone that is $8 otherwise because it's not on the formulary, you're in line at CVS, says, I'm not paying that. You see all these drugs on the counter? Because the formula, they're not on the formulary. That's a word you're going to have to get to know, formula.
It's a very serious issue hitting at the core of our audience, that's for sure. Still to come this morning, the First Lady's here at the big board today. She'll be ringing the opening bell in advance of the premiere of her new film, Melania, which opens on the 30th. Futures, as we said, a bit mixed. We'll talk about this dollar action, which tries to stabilize today. It's still close to a 4-year low. Don't go anywhere.
Today, that history may clash with Trump's slated demand for loyalty as Fed chair. A decision nears, but Danny, who didn't know this? It's out in the open. It's not a secret. It's like if you broke news that Scott Bessent used to work for George Soros.
That the president himself used to donate to Democrats.
Yeah.
So I'm there with you. Maybe it's just this news void, as our friend Neil Dutta calls it, trying to figure out what's coming next. One thing we know is coming next is the first Fed decision of the year, 2 p.m. Eastern today. The Fed is widely expected to hold rates steady, and the decision comes as Chair Powell continues to face scrutiny from the White House. Michael McKee, Bloomberg's international economics and policy correspondent, joins us now, who's in Washington for the decision. Mike, what are you going to be looking out for in a meeting where we're likely to get no change?
Well, we might get a news void at the Federal Reserve, Danny, because the Fed isn't expected to change interest rates. Here's what we are watching. Of course, that decision will be announced at 2 p.m. Wall Street time in a statement released by the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee. And the follow-on question is, do the words additional adjustments to the Federal Reserve rate appear in that document, suggesting that it's still an open question about whether they cut rates again in the future. We'll also be watching to see who else dissents. We're going to start from the proposition that Stephen Myron will dissent, and whether politics or policy dominate what is going on and the questions that are asked of Jay Powell. Now, the dissent or disappear question is posed by Bloomberg Economics. We concede Myron's going to dissent, but does Chris Waller, because he's considered one of the possibilities for the Fed chair, and if he doesn't dissent, does that write him off? We end up the day with Rick Reeder and Chris Waller off the board. We don't know. It's all Donald Trump. We'll have to find out. But the real suspense, I think, is going to be whether or not the president is, whether or not the chairman is going to engage the president again and talk about his efforts to control the Fed, or whether he's going to try to disengage, figuring it could only hurt the markets at this point, and say he doesn't have much to add to.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble and YouTube. Also live streaming both versions with the telemetry and without the market telemetry on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, underneath Broadcast Live. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please subscribe to all my channels, YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, Rumble. You can also follow me on Substack, TikTok, Patreon. There are many ways to follow me. So please subscribe, help support the work that I do. If you like all this free content that I create every day, please donate on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel or my Substack channel. You can follow me on X and GETTR in addition to all those other channels. I have great supplements throughout this broadcast. I'm going to tell you what I take every day to slow down the aging process and boost up my immune system. We're going to go over the news, AI. Today's a big day, the Fed day. We're going to go over how the energy markets are changing. There's news coming out that it looks like there's going to be a blockade that is going to start around Iran. That's the next phase of a military operation by the United States hitting Iran. So stay tuned to that. That's going to move the energy markets. Markets haven't opened up yet. We still have about 10 minutes to go. So let's listen into Bloomberg.
Continue to debate that. When we come back, we'll discuss earnings. There's a lot out today on earnings. And
So they're going into a commercial break. So while we wait, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. I have very high quality products on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have structural nano silver soaps, super important to neutralize, especially during the winter season, but this will also help the health of your skin if you use it every day. You can get it in peppermint, you can get it in lemongrass, and also in charcoal tea tree. All right, so please go to my store, get these very high quality structural nano silver soaps, and they neutralize. That's why it's so important to take them during the winter season. Another great product to take during the winter season, but you can use year round, are the structural nano silver gels. I have it in the quick dispenser form and in the tube form. Get this for your household, really important. It's dual purpose. If you have a cut, an abrasion, minor burn, put it on the lesion. It'll help to heal it quicker. It'll keep the wound clean. You can use it as a daily skincare to improve the top of your skin. And if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, like the cold season, all right, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours and it'll help to neutralize. Super important for the cold season. So please go to my store, get the structural nano silver gels. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off of your order. And I have structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce the plaque formation, neutralize, and improve your oral cavity. Super important, because with good oral hygiene, you're helping your cardiovascular health. A lot of people don't realize that certain types of bacteria, if they get into your bloodstream, guess what? It's going to cause plaque formation and also cause problems with your valves for your heart. You want good oral hygiene so you can have good cardiovascular fitness. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this structural nano silver toothpaste that has no fluoride. It is the best toothpaste that you will be able to get. There's nothing better on the market. Nothing, nowhere. This is the best you can get. So please go to my store and get this toothpaste. Get a few tubes for your household. And it neutralizes. Super important for the winter season. Are you understanding what I'm saying in between the lines here? So since we've had a cold spell around the United States, a lot of people are going to get sick. Trust me on this. All right. Let's listen into, we'll go to CNBC.
Clowns, some hecklers who say, yeah, but the gross margins are any good. Of course not. You have to spend it, get people in. But there are people who are rewards and non-rewards. The numbers are up. That hasn't happened in a very long time. This one's back. Look, this whole period, David, is the recognition that the place was really broken.
Let's go again, because you go so fast. I mean, people.
Well, I don't have time.
No, there is time. It's the North American comp number of 4% that is driving the stock.
Yes.
Other metrics were not great.
No, well, you have to get people in the store first, and then everything follows.
Right.
Then the gross margins will expand.
Even their initial fiscal year 26 guide in the release includes EPS of 215 to 240 versus consensus of
It's a very conservative guide.
225 to 223.
It's a very conservative guide, not unlike what we saw at Chipotle. When
Really, all that matters is
Right.
if more people are coming in and say that's what,
Right,
then
and
that
he's doing
flows through and
right, and a lot of this blocking and tackling is because it doesn't take as long to get. It's because the drive-through lanes are good. Because he closed a lot of the stores that weren't doing well. He's expanding in cities that do not have a lot of Starbucks. It's a rather remarkable turn that if you read any of the verbiage of the last 5 weeks about this quarter, it does have an investor day tomorrow. It was going to be a big miss. Big miss.
First U.S. transaction growth in 8 quarters.
Thank you.
I believe that was up 3%.
Now you're talking. And what I think, look, I know Brian for a very long time. And Brian has said if you get the stores to look better, if you get the baristas to be a little more warm to the customer, it's all going to come together. It seems so simple to talk about throughput. It was so pedestrian. People wanted some sort of like Hemingway-esque tale of how to fix it.
Yeah.
It's about throughput. It's always been about throughput. If you can get people in, get them their coffee, have them sit down, have the outlets work. This is going to bring people back from Dunkin'. And all this stuff about how Luckin's here to look out, even Dutch Bro should be concerned. And I'm a Dutch Bro fan.
All right. We'll keep an eye. I'm sure it's a Starbucks, of course. We got an opening about 5 minutes from now. And the First Lady of the United States will ring that bell. We're back right after this.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Cleanse Max 35 or Max 14. They're at different price points and concentrations. Cleanse is 30 parts per million, Max 14 parts per million, and Max 35 parts per million. But basically what you do is you take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and then swallow it. This will help to improve your oral cavity, improve your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, improve the health of your epithelial cells, especially in your oral pharynx, and your immune system will improve. Your innate immune system will improve because you're improving the barrier. Now, you're neutralizing also in that oral cavity. So this is also going to help with your cardiovascular health, just like the toothpaste. But take this every day. I've been doing this for over 5 years, every day, this protocol. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two and do that, and then go back to your maintenance dose once everything's all clear. But by taking this regularly, you're improving your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, and you're boosting up your immune system. Super important, especially during the winter season. And since we are in the winter season and it's cold out and people are going to get sick, all right, guess what? You want to take vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor that will help with the health of your cells. It also helps to get rid of cells that are infected, so it helps with apoptosis. Vitamin D3 also helps with bone density, helps to absorb calcium and helps to deposit that calcium into bone matrix, so you have denser bone, but you have to do resistance training. Vitamin D3 also helps with cardiovascular health. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3, the Cleanse Max 35 or the Max 14. Also, it's important to detoxify your body. And I have dual purpose deodorants. These deodorants are made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It has no aluminum, no baking soda. You can get it in citrus and you can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Use these deodorants every day, but it will also help to detoxify your body And when you detoxify your body regularly, you're boosting up your immune system and your endocrine system. So please go to my store, get a couple bars for your household, and help boost up your immune system.
S&P 7K definitely in focus today after coming off of the all-time highs yesterday. In a few moments, the First Lady is going to ring the opening bell here at the New York Stock Exchange in advance of the premiere of her film Melania on the 30th. Interestingly, they had an event, Jim, at the White House on Saturday, attended by some luminaries, including Tim Cook.
Right.
The timing got in some criticism because it was the day that Alex Preddy was killed. He has now written a memo to employees saying it's time for de-escalation. I believe America is strongest when we live up to our highest ideals, when we treat everyone with dignity and respect no matter who they are or where they're from.
First of all, ICE needs to do their job and get rid of the illegals. And why should we get virtue signaling by a CEO like Tim Cook from Apple?
For your shareholders, doesn't work for you. It may work for larger issues that you want to go on record saying, but there are intertwining aspects of all business with this man.
Without a doubt, we've talked often, and especially late, about the tightrope that many corporate leaders walk in terms of dealing with public policy in this White House and their obligation to their shareholders and their employees and their customers.
Yes, the RTX yesterday, they will address the idea that maybe they aren't moving fast enough with the Department of War. When you watch the banks, because they haven't gone after so much money, if they get the proposal in the medical, everyone tries to get to the news. It's too big for logic.
As I said, the First Lady here, the big board.
Okay, so the S&P 500 opened up at 7,002, but it's trading right now, as I speak, at 6,999. So hopefully we get past that resistance level 7,000. I have a year-end target of 7,800 for the S&P 500. If things are a little crazy because of wars and tariffs and midterm election, we maybe even at 7,400. So I suspect that we're going to see some volatility this year. Okay. With that, VIX is trading at 16 handle, so low risk. The Japanese yen is trading at 152. The Japanese are intervening in the market. The BOJ is trying to strengthen the currency. It's looking like that the Federal Reserve is helping them. So there's some movements with currency here. Euro is trading at 119, so there's a weakening of the dollar. Bitcoin is trading at 89,000, just under 90,000 right now. So there's a big resistance level, at 95,000 for Bitcoin. Oil is trading at $63 a barrel because we are moving towards. This is really important to pay attention to what I'm going to be saying here. Because we are moving towards the next phase of operations in the Middle East against Iran, we move the ships. The Lincoln is in place. The strike groups are there. George Bush aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean. Everything's ready. The next phase is blockades, all right? And then you'll start seeing that there's tension in the news about will the United States strike? Will the United States? The same thing happened with Venezuela. Days ticked on, weeks ticked on, and then all of a sudden, boom, all right? But I think that it was more surgical for Venezuela. This is going to be more like shock and awe. If you remember back in George Bush Jr. days, hitting Iraq, shock and awe. This is going to be probably bigger than shock and awe. All right, so with that, energy is going to go up. So long oil here, all right? Now, you have to be careful though, because this thing's going to start ticking up. 63, maybe go back to about 62 and a half, and then go back and start marching up to 64, and then come down a little bit, and then start marching back up. When we hit, we're going to probably see a $4 or $5 spike in oil. That's probably the best time to close the position and then short. Now, if you want less risk, do a hedge strategy where you're shorting oil and longing oil, and then play it that way. But that's a more advanced positioning, not for the average investor. All right, so natural gas, because we have a cold spell, natural gas is trading right now at 3.74. It was trading almost at 7. All right, in the high 6, like 6.8, 6. It went down because of contract switching between each month. It switches contracts. All right, and because it was in backwardation, it went down. All right, the ETS adjust for that drop. So right now, natural gas is trading at 3.74. Okay. Earlier this morning was trading at 3.5. Now we have a cold spell. Some natural gas production had to be taken offline because of this ice storm that was coming in Pad 3 in Texas, Louisiana. And but some of it's coming back online. Nothing was really significantly damaged in terms of natural gas production. So there's some power lines that are down, energy spikes, right? So there's a cold spell that's happening, and then there's another one coming next week. So this is going to be a sustained, like 10-day cold spell, maybe a little bit more. So natural gas is going to want to go down because we're going to be going into the spring season, right? So we have like backwardation in natural gas, but we have contango between the contracts for oil. But natural gas will want to naturally go down. And as we start to thaw out of this cold spell, as we move out of the cold spell, you're going to start seeing natural gas start to precipitously drop. And that's where, if you're shorting natural gas, that's where you're going to start seeing your money. All right. But right now, there's a little bit of a momentum play intraday where it's moving upward a little bit. But I suspect that in 2 days, we're probably looking at 3.5. But there's going to be a little bit of volatility for natural gas because of this cold spell. Once the cold spell's gone, natural gas is going to start precipitously dropping. That's what I'm betting on. All right. So with that, hopefully you have a little bit of a better idea on how to play the market. All right. Let's listen into CNBC.
There's 16 seconds.
What I think the larger takeaway on Amazon is, and we've talked about this, is they're facing competition from Walmart that had not really existed in the way it does now previously. And it's obviously grocery, but it's just in general on digital. They are a true and complete competitor, and the ability to pick up in store is a big deal as well.
The number of stores help Walmart.
Yes.
But I would say that
What do you
Amazon.
think? So,
Well, I think that Walmart, I've looked up with no is remarkable. They really snuck up on Amazon. Why Amazon's focused on web services, which is going to be big. I mean, when you talk to Amazon, they had things everywhere. Well, yeah, Amazon Go, they got many different flavors for Whole Foods. I mean, it's almost as if, are we Kroger? Well, maybe we should be Costco. Hey, you know what? Maybe we should be Target. I mean, they don't know. They're like a triple schizophrenic. They're like Abdel Louisiana, really tripping.
Maybe the more interesting retail story today, Jim, is LVMH, where organic was up only 1. Fashion and leather opera net down 13. Handbags down 3.
Wow. Dollar Tree, yes.
That's going to take it back to, maybe say mid-October.
Yeah, and their expensive liquor, no, we're not going to Hennessy anymore. We're not Hennessy. Yeah, I'd rather have store brand. Things are changing so fast. But by the way, let's flip it. TJX has been a major disappointment during this period. So it's like, what are people doing besides going to Dollar Tree? Actually, Dollar General.
You're right. TJX has really turned around.
No, I have this been, it's a club name that's really been, it's been hurting me.
Why?
We don't know. Nothing.
Maybe,
We just don't talk.
I mean, could there be, we did get an upgraded target yesterday. I think out of Wolf to peer perform on it, but still.
Look, I would never ban the TJX. It's got the best management. And a lot of people feel, listen, the country's snowed in. And so people are shopping. All right, there's that. Well,
Yeah, but you would think that given, especially given the whole affordability issues and everything else, that they would be a potential
I
beneficiary.
agree. And I am surprised, and I'm just going to put out a poll and say, club members, we should buy it. And I'm going to probably talk about it today at the 10:20 meeting, where I think that it's time. I think TJX has come down too much. He's a superior operator with a superior attitude, superior state of mind. Like Steven Seagal in the movie Arthur.
You're full of many references today.
You really are.
Deloise.
Classic.
Seagal.
I'm not.
I love Deloise. He was
something.
he was
Underrated.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pivot over to CNN. They're talking about Pretty shooting, Stephen Miller amidst possible protocol breach. So let's listen into CNN here.
Abercrombie and Kent. Life well traveled.
We met in high school. Our daughter is 10 weeks old, very fresh. We had this big plan to purchase a new home.
The blame game inside the Trump administration, while the president says things in Minneapolis are going to, quote, de-escalate a bit. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller, the president's powerful advisor, are taking heat over the deadly shooting of Alex Pretty and their statements after it. Miller described Pretty as a would-be assassin. Noem described him as a domestic terrorist. The videos clearly refuted those claims, and now Noem is facing growing bipartisan calls to resign, and Miller, in a rare retreat, is acknowledging agents may have breached protocol that he set or the White House set before the shooting. With us now, CNN's Betsy Klein and Jeff Zeleny. And first, I just want to hold up a flowchart, friend, of my understanding of the blame game here. There you can see, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is blaming Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller seems to be blaming Customs and Border Protection. Betsy, you're at the White House. Do I have that flowchart correct?
I think that's about an accurate assessment, John. And I just want to point to this very remarkable statement to our colleague Kristen Holmes from Stephen Miller yesterday. As you said, in the immediate aftermath of federal agents' killing of Alex Pretty on Saturday, we heard Stephen Miller go to social media almost immediately. He referred to Pretty as, quote, a domestic terrorist, also a would-be assassin. And you can believe that he was behind a lot of the messaging that was coming from this White House. But then, yet last night, in a statement to our colleague Kristen Holmes, he says, quote, the White House had provided clear guidance to DHS that the extra personnel that had been sent to Minnesota for force protection should be used for conducting fugitive operations to create a physical barrier between the arrest teams and the disruptors. He goes on to say, we are evaluating why the CBP team may not have been following that protocol. He also says that some of the original statements that were coming from the Department of Homeland Security were, quote, based on reports from CBP on the ground. So clearly shifting blame there and notably not disputing that he was involved in those statements.
But not apologizing for them either, correct, Betsy?
Why would he apologize?
Okay, and that's important.
Why
because he
is that
said
important?
He's blaming now CBP for giving him the information that led to those statements, but he is not apologizing. Jeff, bigger picture here, when you take a step back.
Why would he apologize?
This is
The whole
very
point, the whole point of the feds getting involved is they're getting rid of illegal aliens. And oh, by the way, the mayor and the governor were fighting against the feds. They didn't want to cooperate. And then you had citizens saying they're protecting their other citizens. Well, they're illegal. They're illegal citizens. ICE needs to round them up and get them out. See, I think people are missing the point here. The whole issue is that there's illegal aliens in the country that need to leave.
From this Trump administration, or any Trump administration for that matter, They have really conducted now about 3 retreats in the last week, by my count. First on Greenland, first the idea of no military action, definitely going to own it now. Maybe not so much. The president had to backtrack on saying NATO troops weren't on the front lines in Afghanistan, and now clearly backing off a little bit in Minneapolis. That's a lot different than we've seen before from this administration.
John, it absolutely is. It's not only unusual, it just hasn't happened, particularly on immigration. Look, this was intended to be a strength for President Trump. It always has been. It's one of the things that's helped get him elected in the first place back in 2016 and certainly reelected in 2024. Now immigration is viewed by Republicans as a weakness for this administration. That explains the flow chart that you were pointing out earlier. Stephen Miller isn't doing this simply because he suddenly had a change of heart. He's doing this because even a few Republicans, a small but growing number of Republicans, are beginning to confront and challenge and question this administration. It is all coming, of course, as the very
Come on, get it out.
As the very mission in Minnesota is being reviewed. And it's a funding review from ICE, of course. It could lead to a government shutdown at the end of the week. We shall see. But Stephen Miller knows the president is unhappy about this. That's why he is sort of backpedaling here. But the bigger picture, it's not just optics here. Is policy actually going to change? And that is very much unclear. One huge difference from this administration versus the first Trump administration, he's very reluctant to fire anyone. In the first administration, people were being fired all the time, week by week. That has not happened. So I do not expect any firings here, but this is a dramatic change of a position here. And keep your eye on Stephen Miller. He's viewed as a liability in some circles here. He's very close to the president. I don't expect him to go anywhere, but that statement that Betsy was reading is extraordinary because we have never seen a retreat like that from him.
Yeah, and Betsy, just, I'll hold up the flow chart once again, since Jeff just celebrated it here. Where's the president in this flow chart? Who exactly does the president blame among these 3 choices?
Well, I think the president's message here is that he's trying to de-escalate. He is trying to, we've seen him even talk to Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Fry in the aftermath. And the president now is essentially saying that those calls are cordial and constructive. But when we ask if this is a substantive or a symbolic change, the White House is still actively blaming Democrats. We heard from Caroline Leavitt saying that this is a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat officials, blaming the Brighteon killing on Democrats. But the question is going to be, what is the change on the ground in Minneapolis here? And President Trump is appearing to indicate that there might be some more substantive changes. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, based on how Tom Homan has described the conversation with Tim Walz and the mayor there, and they both have described it, there is a bit of substantive difference there, merely in the dialogue. And very quickly, Jeff, while I still have you here, Republicans on Capitol Hill, how far do you think they're willing to take their criticism?
Well, we will see. I mean, it's a... Well, we will see. I mean, it's a growing number, but it's still a very small number of people. But I think the Senate Majority Leader John Thune was interesting yesterday. He called this an inflection point. So everyone is calling for an investigation and more oversight into ICE. Again, that is not something we saw after the Renee Good shooting. So this is a different moment. There is no doubt about it. But again, to Betsy's point, will policies change on the ground? Again, what was a strength of the administration is now a political weakness.
A lot of fingers being pointed over the Trump administration's false claim that Alex Preddy, the man fatally shot in Minneapolis, was out to massacre federal agents, an accusation just not supported by the video we've all seen. Multiple sources suggested to Axios that the language came from the president's hardline advisor, Stephen Miller, with one source saying, quote, Miller gunned and knew what the narrative would be. Preddy came to massacre cops. Miller, for his part, said, quote, any early comments made were based on information sent to the White House through Customs and Border Protection. With us now is Mark Caputo, the senior politics reporter for Axios, who really broke this story yesterday. Mark, as always, I'm really excited to talk to you since you were out so far in front of this story. I put together a little flow chart based on your reporting here of who is being blamed and how inside the White House and inside the administration. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is blaming Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller appears to be blaming Customs and Border Protection. Do I have that correct?
I mean, generally, what I do know is that Noam is feeling the heat, obviously on Capitol Hill and elsewhere. And she's told people, and I'm told she also told the president, look, everything I've said is because of what I've been told to say and do by the president, Stephen Miller. And as you pointed out, Miller is saying that statement that was released, it came because of on-the-ground reports from CBP. And specifically, what you're hearing more people in the White House start to say is the bad guy in all of this, and I'm putting bad guy in air quotes, is Greg Bovino, who was the commander, the cowboy, in the words of one person who was in charge of this, let's call it shambolic operation that resulted in the deaths of 2 people and the shooting of a total of 3 in a month.
Yeah, there are 2 separate things I think we should point out here that Miller now seems to be saying to you and others. Number one, that CBP, that the officers on the ground broke some kind of protocol, some kind of instructions they'd been given by the White House about how they were supposed to behave, actually enforce the law. But also Miller is saying that he was told perhaps misleading stuff by CBP. Those are 2 things, but are those both directionally what Stephen Miller is saying now?
Yeah, that's correct. According to the White House, according to Miller, there is a protocol that they have developed where these teams, these squads that would go on these immigration raids or to execute these warrants or find, in their words, these criminal aliens, would be divided in 2. One group would do crowd control to stop what they called the disruptors, and the other would go and do the arrests. And according to them, on this fateful day, on Saturday, that just sort of devolved into chaos, and none of that took place. And obviously, the background of this, there have been other videos of other cases of pretty egregious policing that had happened under Bovino. Specifically, there was the young man at Target, the Target worker who was pushing around grocery store carts, gotten some sort of jawboning incident with these agents. They tackled him, they kind of beat him, they shoved him in a van, and they dropped him off nearby. Stuff like that did start to really rankle with the president, and finally the president made his change on Monday.
Yeah, I was going to say, so based on your reporting, if we have this chart of the blame game, where does the president fit here? As far as you can tell, who is the president blaming for all this?
He's not really blaming anyone. It's just one of those sort of, hey, things sort of happen and let's move on. One of the things the president doesn't want to do is communicate a weakness that he's backing off. And in that, under that umbrella, is the idea that he needs to make a change. So let's just be very clear. Kristi Noem, from all the information we're getting and from all the observations that we've made collectively as the news media and those of us who cover the White House specifically, Kristi Noem is staying. And so is Stephen Miller, his longest-serving political advisor, from Trump 1, architect of the immigration plan, a guy with encyclopedic knowledge of immigration law, who really sort of represents a lot of the hardline policies that Trump at heart really does enjoy.
And then just very quickly, any bit of reporting that you've done that indicates that Noem or Miller or anyone might apologize for the statements that they made just after this incident happened on Saturday?
I have gotten no indication of that. We've asked if, hey, do you want to issue at least some sort of correcting information? And so far, the answer to that has been no.
Mark Caputo, as I said, great reporting on this. You were having fun with this yesterday. Really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Did you notice that CNN is trying to get people to admit that they made mistakes? What about Alex Pretty just not being there, impeding on ICE? Meanwhile, ICE was trying to do their job by rounding up illegals. And where's CNN talking about the lives at stake of the ICE agents? These crazy mobs are harming ICE agents. They don't cover that. I mean, how much did CNN talk about the finger that was bit off? I mean, this is almost like Dawn of the Dead in Minneapolis. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the complete multivitamin. This multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity. They are cofactors to allow for the proper conformation so your cells perform properly. It's easy to digest. Take it every day to help slow down the aging process. Now, it's part of the foundation of my anti-aging protocol. Another ingredient for the foundation is is the probiotics. You can get it in powdered version or in the veggie cap version. Either one. Now, what it'll do is just bring down inflammation at the gut level, boost up your immune system at the gut level, help with your metabolism, help you to absorb your nutrients. It will also improve your skin and help with your brain function. A lot of people don't realize good gut health also translates into good health for your brain and brain function. It allows you to get rid of that brain fog. It also allows you to sleep better. And when you sleep better, you're going to get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep that will allow you to detoxify your central nervous system and consolidate memory and be well rested. So taking a good probiotic is super important. Stack it with the multivitamin, that's the foundation. And then the 4 pillars on top of the foundation. The first pillar, cleanse max 35 or max 14 to boost up the immune system. Second pillar, C60 to soak up the free radicals. Third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And the last pillar, boomer boost, rev up your metabolism and your energy levels. And if you pay attention to that core anti-aging protocol that I just mentioned, with that foundation, you're targeting all of the major components where you're aging. You're targeting energy levels, you're targeting you're targeting oxidants, you're targeting inflammation. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. All right. Let's also take a look at, this was just published by Live Now about Iran.
Looking for tax help? Now there are TurboTax experts right in your neighborhood. They get to know your unique situation and get you every...
I do want to get you to some breaking news that we have been following throughout the morning. Take a look at your screen right here. As President Trump says, he is sending a, quote, massive armada to Iran. The announcement made this morning on Truth Social as tensions continue between the U.S. and Iran. Here is that full post right there on your screen. He says, a massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose. It is a larger fleet headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln than that sent to Venezuela. Like with Venezuela, it is ready, willing, and able to rapidly fulfill its mission with speed and violence if necessary. Hopefully, Iran will quickly, quote, come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons. One that is good for all parties. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. They didn't, and there was Operation Midnight Hammer, a major destruction of Iran. The next attack will be far worse. Don't make that happen again. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, we do have this video that we've shown you coming in out of Iran within the last few weeks or so, and we know that activists are now saying Iran's crackdown on national protests have killed more than 6,100 people and many others still feared dead. The Iranian regime does argue that number is much lower. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier and guided missile destroyers accompanying it provide the U.S. that ability to strike Iran, as we've heard from Gulf Arab states that have essentially made it clear they want to stay out of any attack. Right now, I do want to discuss all of this further, so let's bring in Jonathan Saye, an Iran analyst with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Hi, Josh. It's great to be with you.
And first off, I wanted to ask you about this breaking news. You did see some of the comments there that were made by President Trump on Truth Social this morning about this armada. Kind of give me your take on all of that.
So comparing this scenario to Venezuela, what is a likely scenario is a situation where this fleet will be in place to block Iran's access to the oil market, illicit oil market at that, because under the maximum pressure campaign, this administration has sought to reduce Iranian oil exports to zero, that is illegally getting transferred to China. That is one likely scenario, but another angle of looking at this is that this is a message to the Islamic Republic that, of course, we will advance and we will try our best to pursue diplomacy with you, but if that fails to materialize, we would have to pursue kinetic action against your whether military establishment or ballistic missile stockpiles. So it's really a message to the Islamic Republic, and the ball is in their court. It's debatable whether a regime like Tehran would actually negotiate in good faith, but nonetheless, all the options are now on the table when it comes to.
This is the reason why, if you're watching the telemetry version, you're seeing that oil is trading at about 63.23. It's creeping up to 65. All right? There's going to be a blockade. I don't think that Trump is going to hit Iran this week, but it's going to build up and it's going to create this energy of anticipation, and oil will spike probably $4 to $5 a barrel when the strike does happen. All right, but this looks like it's inching towards $65 a barrel right now.
A potential deal or a strike against the Islamic Republic.
And is that what President Trump means, where he said in past days that all of this is kind of quote unquote in flux? Because we know that days ago we heard from President Trump, he said things had kind of moved downward as far as any plans for a U.S. military strike there. It seemed as though that was not really happening anymore. It was not on the table. But now you hear him say it's quote unquote in flux.
The angle to look at it is the first attack that may have been called off was likely a symbolic attack, and realistically was going to be limited in its targeting. Now, with the reinforcements coming in, of course, the fleet and other elements in the region signals to us that if there were to be another attack, it would be larger in scale. So that's the real message there. But when it comes to diplomacy with the Islamic Republic, at this point, it is really challenging for us to really look at what leverage Tehran has, what cards they hold. After the 12-day war and after Operation Midnight Hammer, the Islamic Republic really lost its leverage because their nuclear program was targeted, their ballistic missiles were also targeted, even though they still continue to have the largest arsenal in the Middle East. Nonetheless, they don't really negotiate over ballistic missiles. They want to keep it contained to a nuclear deal. Whereas Washington, on the other hand, has been pursuing something greater than simply limiting enrichment or really seeing another version of a JCPOA from 2015.
Has the Iranian regime overall been weakened, let's say weakened, by the U.S. actions there?
It certainly has been. So the way to look at it is that there's a domestic angle and an external angle. Domestically, we've seen the regime is inherently ideologically bankrupt. It's increasingly relying on foreign proxies to do its dirty work on the soil, which means that not only has it lost its legitimacy amongst its population, but also amongst its supporters. Externally speaking, the axis of resistance is severely weakened. Hezbollah does not have the same capabilities as it did a year ago. Same with Hamas and other entities as well. But more importantly, their air defenses are down and they have not been able to reestablish them. So really, their lines of deterrence are gradually decreasing. So it's really a prime opportunity for Washington and Europe and Israel in this case to leverage and capitalize on this anti-regime momentum because it's really a matter of time until we see another massive protest wave. Of course, the regime is going to continue to gun down these protesters, but nonetheless, that tells you that this regime is inherently illegitimate. It is the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, and they actually sought to assassinate President Trump more than once.
And I have to imagine that it's not really a surprise that we're hearing these disputed casualty figures from the Iranian regime, because again, activists now saying that number is above 6,100 with more people feared dead. And essentially the Iranian regime is saying, no, that's not possible. But that's not really a surprise to hear that number disputed, right?
It certainly is not. Unfortunately, Islamic Republic's diplomatic mouthpiece continues to spread lies. Evidently, they're not going to admit that they massacred their own people, because one, that would signal how illegitimate they are, but also it would really express that the regime has officially crossed President Trump's red line of murdering protesters. Listen, we heard numbers as high as 30,000, which is unfortunately believable, given the weapons that was being used against protesters, given that they deployed over 5,000 terror proxies. that are only trained in warfare against an unarmed population. And if you look at Iran, a country of 90 million with a lot of major cities, 14 million people just in the capital, the numbers start to make sense to you. If they were to kill a few hundred in each city, the numbers would increasingly go to tens of thousands. And they've done this before. This is not their first time that they opened fire on protesters. We know in 2019, they were able to kill 2,000 within about 24 hours. So now that this movement has gone on for 3 weeks, coupled with internet outages, tells us that realistically the number is much higher than what we even hear from certain agencies or the Islamic Republic itself.
And as we kind of watch all of this play out, it's important to remember that a big aspect of this was the economy, right? And we've seen kind of a shift, I guess, in the currency there in Iran as far as what it's worth. Can you explain that for folks out there?
So Iran... So Iran's protest movements have had different triggers throughout the past decade. This most recent one was an economic trigger.
There's breaking news with the Secretary of Treasury with CNBC. Let's go to that.
Just this week, since the start of filing season with the IRS, we've had 600,000 families out of an estimated 25 million already fill out Form 4547.
So people are signing up, because that was one of the things, maybe you could try to get it to be more automatically tied to Social Security numbers so people don't have to opt in. Maybe that's a better way of bringing, especially low-income Americans.
Well, look, we think that everyone will do it. You can do it on your phone. And so everyone can go to trumpaccount.gov, sign up today.
I think part of what you're trying to do, as you've said it, is mint a new generation of capitalists. I like to think also minting a new generation of CNBC viewers. But, we do have this thing in the country where 39%, according to a recent Gallup poll, of people have a favorable view of socialism, and a little more than 50% have a favorable view of capitalism. What's going on there?
Well, I think that dovetails somewhat that 38% of American households have no exposure to equities. So I think with these Trump accounts, the president's done peace deals, trade deals, and tax deals. But imagine like this enduring legacy as the children who are born in 25, 26, 27, 28, in 18 years when these accounts have been compounding for that period, the money goes into a broad-based index fund. And I've done a lot of financial literacy, and this is a real-time learning experiment. So everyone we're going to shoot to get everyone a stake in the great innovation in our country, in the economic engine. And I bet if we do this survey in 5-10 years, we'll have drastically different results.
Well, it helps that the S&P is making new highs every day. We're coming off of 3 straight years of double-digit consecutive gains in the S&P. We're at 7,000. I mean, how sustainable is that?
Again, markets fluctuate, but I think we put in the good policies for sound economic growth, and we are seeing record S&P earnings. We're seeing the trillions of dollars of investment come back to the U.S., and we're seeing inflation move back towards the Fed's target. So, and that as someone who's studied this and made a career of it, that the previous performance doesn't dictate what we're going to see this year. It's events and it's policy, and I think we got great policies.
I mean, speaking of investing in America, I mean, one question people have right now is the appeal of U.S. assets, especially when they look at the U.S. dollar, which is trading at multi-year lows. I know the president sort of endorsed this as a good thing yesterday, but is it really a good thing if people are wondering if the dollar is the right place to be?
Well, again, U.S. always has a strong dollar policy, but strong dollar policy means setting the right fundamentals. And I think that with President Trump, with the One Big Beautiful Bill, with our regulatory policies, we are making this the best place to come, build your business, have tax certainty, regulatory certainty, energy certainty, and over time, the prices on the screen can fluctuate over 6
You don't
months,
worry
a
about
year.
the weakness in the dollar?
But again, if we have sound policies, the money will flow in. And we are bringing down our trade deficits. So they automatically, that should lead to more dollar strength over time.
Are we intervening in the currency market right now, strengthening the yen? Is that happening?
Absolutely not.
Is that something you're planning to do? There was word that the New York Fed was looking for prices.
Again, we don't comment other than to say we have a strong dollar policy. And again, I think President Trump has, the past year, 2025, was about setting the table. And now I think we're going to have a very strong economy this year. The Democrats don't shut down the government. The Atlanta Fed GDP now number is 5.4%. When was the last time we saw that?
It's a high growth number. And one of the questions is, can we get that kind of growth without sparking inflation?
I think we can, because what causes inflation is supply constraint, and with the deregulatory agenda that we have, we are creating supply, whether it's in financial lending, whether it's in energy, we're increasing manufacturing. So again, what led to the great inflation was the Democrats caused a demand shock with government spending, but they caused a supply constraint with all the overregulation. We're doing the opposite. We got a private sector boom, and we are taking out dozens of regulations for every new regulation that goes in.
But there will be stimulus this year as a result of the big beautiful bill, the tax refunds that are set to hit the economy. I guess the question is, can we avoid inflation in that scenario? We're already starting to see it in wages.
Sorry?
We're already starting to see wages climbing.
We're also seeing substantial productivity. So productivity and wage growth does not lead to inflation, and there's measured inflation and observable inflation. Measured inflation is with a lag, so we can see that rents are substantially down. It's different than the measurement. So the observable inflation, some of the more online or quick sampling inflation numbers are substantially below 2% already.
Today's Fed Day. We're expecting the Fed to do nothing today on rates. Is that a mistake?
That's up to the Fed, and we'll see what they do. I do think that there are many members on the board who had a false narrative on inflation, and I hope that they will have an open mind and see what's coming over the next couple of months.
Speaking of what's coming, when do you expect the president to make the decision or the announcement around the next Fed chair? Because this weekend is when Governor Myron's term is actually up.
Well, it doesn't have to be up, so it can continue. I went out with the president to Iowa for a great rally yesterday, and we had a long discussion on the plane back.
Did you make your recommendation?
As Bessent is talking on CNBC, there's big movements in the currency market. The Japanese yen is weakening and the euro is weakening. And at the same time, oil started to go down.
Okay, so the other, sort of factor on investors' minds right now is the geopolitics. The fact that, this week President Trump is raising tariffs on South Korea because they haven't ratified their trade deal. What signal does that send to some of the other countries that you've negotiated these deals with and have already announced them?
Sign the trade deal. It's the South Korean parliament has not passed the trade deal, so there is no trade deal until they ratify it.
So that's until they ratify it, they will face the 25% tariffs?
Well, I think it's helpful to get things moved along.
What about Europe and India signing this massive trade deal? Does that threaten America that some of these countries are moving ahead with free trade without us?
They should do what's best for themselves. But I will tell you, I find the Europeans very disappointing because the Europeans are on the front line of the Ukraine-Russia war. The Europeans, India started buying sanctioned Russian oil, And guess who was buying the refined product?
Their
The
diplomats
Europeans. So the
are on the
Europeans have
ground,
been
except
funding the war against themselves and like something that you couldn't have made up. The U.S. sanctioned or put a 25% tariff on India for buying the Russian oil. The Europeans were unwilling to join us, and it turns out because they wanted to do this trade deal. So every time you hear a European talk about the importance of the Ukrainian people, remember that they put trade ahead of the Ukrainian people. Trade, European trade, more important than ending the war in Ukraine.
they need energy, though, I guess, is part of their issue.
At a price, they want cheap energy, but we could have cheaper energy too if we were willing to buy sanctioned Russian oil.
What about Canada? We've got a bit of a rift there lately, and there's different accounts between you and Prime Minister Mark Carney about that call this week, post Davos with President Trump. He says that he dug in and reinforced the message. You said that he walked it back.
I was on the call. Prime Minister Carney, in my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. It never really works out well. So I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people, not his own virtue signaling, because we do have a USMCA negotiation coming up, and that he rose to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump message, and that's not a great place to be when you're negotiating with an economy that is multiple larger than you are and your biggest trading partner. In the end, I think we will end up in a good place. May not be a straight line.
Are you saying that they will face consequences in these trade negotiations, reopening the USMCA?
I am saying that I would not pick a fight going into USMCA to score some cheap political points. Either you are working for your own political career or you're working for the Canadian people.
What about our own government? Now, as you referenced, we could be barreling toward the shutdown at the end of the week. Last time we did see an economic effect as a result of the shutdown. What do you expect?
We did. I don't know what to expect. The Democrats can become unhinged like they were last time, and they don't care. Like they think this is a way to stop President
They're
Trump.
tapping into something in the mood of the country when it comes to the funding of ICE.
Again, President Trump has brought down the temperature on the situation. He's in constant contact, and he is urging them not to shut down the government. And again, that much of what happened during the shutdown, or some of what happened during the shutdown, that gets pushed into this quarter. But especially on the service side, when the government shut down, that never comes back. So there's a big permanent loss. I hope the Democrats won't do that again.
Are you hearing from business leaders on Minnesota and what's going on there? They've been a little reluctant to speak out, but we are seeing them communicate with their employees about the situations. What do you hear?
I haven't heard from any business leaders on it.
Do you see any potential economic fallout around this? If we see, I don't know, certain pockets of workers, immigrants, reluctant to go to work, that sort of thing?
Well, what I can tell you is that we've seen about 2.5 million the illegal aliens, either through voluntary deportation or ICE deportations, leave the workforce. And one of the things that no one believed would happen was we're seeing the low-end housing or low-end rents go down. So affordability, part of the affordability crisis was letting in 10, 20 million new people who all needed a place to live. So what we are seeing is better affordability.
Yeah, on the affordability, business leaders that I talk to, always praise the Trump administration as being pro-growth, pro-business. But this year, there's been some surprises. The latest is the health insurers selling off on keeping these Medicare rates flat, but also trying to get Wall Street out of the housing market, capping credit card rates. Some of these are seen as more populist, less pro-business measures.
Well, again, the business leaders always want everything all the time. This administration, if we take the big banks or all banks, at Treasury, at the three regulators, control of the currency, the Fed, FDIC, we've been very pro safe, sound, and smart deregulation. They got record profits. The stocks are at a record high, and then they get upset when we want to examine the credit card business. President Trump has said that Obamacare is really just a subsidy for the insurance companies. All we did was saying we're not raising the amounts that we're paying to these healthcare providers who have gouged the government and not provided great service to the American people.
So you're gonna stick with these policies. A lot of people think that the credit card one can't ultimately pass.
Again, sir, what we've seen is in the old days, you used to compete on APR, the annual financing rate. Now you compete on benefits, on rewards, and the benefits and rewards go mostly to upper end clients. So why not pull down the benefits and the rewards a little and have a look at the rates? Because before the GFC, the average spread over Fed funds for credit cards was about 1,000 basis points, and now we've just blown that out.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens and where that one goes. But we certainly appreciate the time here at the Trump Account Summit. Secretary Bessman, thank you.
It's an exciting day. We're going to have some exciting announcements.
Okay, we'll be reporting them.
Dramatic impacts on us, but also on Colombia and on the Caribbean basin and all sorts of other places. It was an untenable situation and it had to be addressed. And it was addressed. And now the question becomes what happens moving forward. As I've described to you in previous settings and in individual conversations, we had three objectives here. The final, I'll work it backwards because the end state here is we want to reach a phase of transition where we are left with a friendly, stable, prosperous Venezuela and democratic, in which all elements of society are represented in free and fair elections. By the way, you can have elections. You can have elections all day. But if the opposition has no access to the media, if opposition candidates are routinely dismissed and unable to be on the ballot because the government, those aren't free and fair elections. That's the end state that we want: free, fair, prosperous, and friendly Venezuela. We're not going to get there in 3 weeks. It's going to take some time. And so objective number one was stability. In the aftermath of the removal of Maduro, the concern was what happens in Venezuela. Is there civil war? Do the different factions start going at each other? Are 1 million people crossing the border into Colombia? All of that has been avoided. And one of the primary ways that it has been avoided is the ability to establish direct, honest, respectful, but very direct and honest conversations with the people who today control the elements of that nation, meaning the law enforcement, the government apparatus, etc. And one of the tools that's available to us is the fact that we have sanctions on oil. There's oil that is sanctioned that cannot move from Venezuela because of our quarantine. And so what we did is we entered into an arrangement with them. And the arrangement is this: on the oil that is sanctioned in quarantine, we will allow you to move it to market. We will allow you to move it to market at market prices, not at the discount China was getting. In return, the funds from that will be deposited into an account that we will have oversight over. And you will spend that money for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. Why was that important? Venezuela was running out of storage capacity. Okay, they were producing oil, they were drilling it, they had nowhere to put it. They had nowhere to move it, and they were facing a fiscal crunch. They needed money in the immediacy to fund the police officer, the sanitation workers, the daily operations of government. And so we've been able to create a short-term mechanism. This is not going to be the permanent mechanism, but this is a short-term mechanism in which the needs of the Venezuelan people can be met through a process that we've created, where they will submit every month a budget of this is what we need funded. We will provide for them at the front end what that money cannot be used for. And they've been very cooperative in this regard. In fact, they have pledged to use a substantial amount of those funds to purchase medicine and equipment directly from the United States. As in fact, one of the things they need is dilutin, or dilute, depending how you want to pronounce it. And that basically is the light crude that you need to mix with their heavy crude in order for the oil to be able to be mixed and moved. They used to get 100% of that from Russia. They are now getting 100% of that from the United States. So we're using that short-term mechanism both to stabilize the country, but also to make sure that the oil proceeds that are currently being generated through the licenses will now begin to issue on the sanctioned oil goes to the benefit of the Venezuelan people, not to fund the system that existed in the past. The second is the phase in which you want to see a normalized oil industry. Again, look, we've got plenty of oil. There's plenty of oil all over the world. Canada produces heavy crude, so it's not like Venezuela's oil is unique in that regard, despite the fact they have the largest known reserves in the world. It's not irreplaceable. But we understand that that is the lifeline. Their natural resources are going to allow Venezuela to be stable and prosperous moving forward. And so we've created what we hope to do is transition to a mechanism that allows that to be sold in a normal way, a normal oil industry, not one dominated by cronies, not one dominated by graft and corruption. To that end, the authorities there deserve some credit. They have passed a new hydrocarbon law that basically eradicates many of the Chavez-era restrictions on private investment in the oil industry. It probably doesn't go far enough to attract sufficient investment, but it's a big step from where they were 3 weeks ago. So that's a major change. We can address some of the other components, but I'll run out of time. But one of the parts of the transition phase, or the recovery phase, is beginning to create space for different voices inside of Venezuelan politics to have an ability to speak out. Part of that is the release of political prisoners. By some estimates, up to 2,000. They are releasing them. They are releasing them probably slower than I would like them to, but they are releasing them. And in fact, you're starting to see some of the people being released beginning to speak out and participate in political life in the country. We have a long ways to go. Look, we can talk in more detail about all of these things. Suffice it to say, I'm not here to claim to you this is going to be easy or simple. I am saying that in 3.5, almost 4 weeks, we are much further along on this project than we thought we would be, given the complexities that are going into it. And I recognize that it won't be easy. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we are dealing with people over there that have spent most of their lives living in a gangster paradise. So it's not going to be like from one day to the next, we're going to have this thing turn around overnight. But I think we're making good and decent progress. It is the best plan, and we are certainly better off today in Venezuela than we were 4 weeks ago. And I think and hope and expect that we'll be better off in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months than we would have been had Maduro still been there. So thank you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Pay attention. There is going to be big moves in the energy markets. Pay attention to the show. Trust me. All right. Actually, what's going on in energy long term, the next 15 years, is probably going to be bigger than AI. All right. I know that's a pretty bold statement. A lot of people are being a little stupid with AI, but I'm telling you, it's all about energy. It always has been. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, help to reduce load on your pancreas, super important if you're 40 years of age or older. As you get older, your pancreas doesn't function as well. You don't want to be a Steve Jobs, all right? So get the digestive enzyme complex and digest your food easier. Now, if you are an athlete, you'll benefit from this, because if you take pre or post-workout fueling for your sport, this will help to break up those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. So please go to my store, get this digestive enzyme complex. It's also dual purpose. It has bromelain in it. It'll help to break up clots. Also, the proteolytic enzymes in here will break up glycoproteins, which is super important during the winter season. And that's the reason why I kept on telling everybody 5 years ago, you better go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex to weather the storm in 2020. Please go to my store and get the structural nano silver drops. You can get it in honey. I'm sorry, in cherry flavor, honey and lemon, and in blueberry. All right. I also have the lozenges, structural nano silver lozenges. You can get it in orange splash flavor, vitamin C, and you can get Manuka honey. Very high quality. Once you have that throat irritation, take them right away. If you're around someone that's sick or you're not feeling well, take them right away. All right. You can take them prophylactically. If someone's around you that's not feeling well, you might want to protect your oral pharynx. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a few bags for your household. Be prepared for the winter season and the allergy season. Because of this cold spell, you're going to find out that a lot of people around you are not feeling too well. Better be prepared. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off.
Prisoners, which he did. Many of them were subsequently exiled or rearrested, and that he would hold free and fair elections, which he did not. In fact, he basically disqualified Maria Corina Machado and any other candidate. And Edmundo Gonzalez ends up being the nominee for the opposition party simply because they forgot to ban him. And they forgot to put him on the ban list. And then despite that, he loses an election that everyone around the world recognizes as a legitimate election. So he's made previous deals. In fact, he's broken so many deals, not even the Vatican has been willing to interact with Maduro in the past because he's broken so many of these deals. He's just simply not a guy you can make a deal with. He had no intent of keeping it. What he wanted to do was tap us along and buy 3 years of time until he could deal with a new administration that he thought may be more favorable, etc.
That's a great point. That's a great point that he's making. The Democratic Party has always been soft glove with our enemies, right? We need to be forceful. And this Don Roe doctrine, it's a great idea. You know what? It's time for America to start exercising our hegemonic power.
Years, we are having serious counter-narcotic talks with Venezuelan authorities about going after narcotics organizations. For the first time in 20 years, we are having serious conversations about eroding and eliminating the Iranian presence, the Chinese influence, the Russian presence as well. In fact, I would tell you that there are many elements there in Venezuela that welcome a return to establishing relations to the United States on multiple fronts. We are at the end talking about a Western country that has a long history of cooperation and work with the United States. At one time, Venezuela, pre-Chavez, was a very strong U.S. ally. And we hope to get back to that point. We're not there. This thing still is in its infancy. But I certainly think a lot of progress is being made in that regard.
All right, I want to switch over to Bloomberg. It looks like they're talking about energy here.
Win for small cap, but we are, in rates are lower than they had been. And we saw the rallies start to happen last year, which we kind of expected. What happened though was a very low quality rally last year for small cap. Not too unusual, but the magnitude of it was very strong. What we're starting to see, actually starting in November of last year, is quality really matters. And investors do believe that small cap it does have some legs here. There are some very, very attractive companies.
Stay away from individual stocks. You will get killed. You may make some, big gains. All right. I guarantee you, if you're doing individual stocks, I'm making more money in oil. But if you want to do individual stocks, there's idiosyncratic risk. All right. You don't want to do that. If you want to invest in small caps, go with the Russell 3000. Right? Or 2000. Go with the Russell 2000 because it's the lowest 2000. If you want a little bit of exposure to mid caps, get the Russell 1000. So you want Russell 1000 for large and medium, Russell 2000 for small cap. All right? But it's really safe to just do the S&P 500 or some sort of leveraged ETF of based on the S&P 500. But the bottom line is this: do not invest in individual stocks. It will hurt you in the long run. Now, I personally think that the Russell 1000 is better because you get that mid-cap exposure and you have the large-cap exposure. But that's just me. I'm a macro trend, macro economy type guy, trader. All right, let's go back to Bloomberg.
A few years ago, and now gold and silver are so expensive. People like me who are strategists who have a chance to say, silver is the most expensive ever versus crude oil, and the most expensive ever versus copper. Probably not a good idea to put on new longs in precious metals at these levels. They're just getting way too stretched. I'll get the fundamentals, but markets just get too extreme. I think that's where we are now.
How about the trade or the narrative out there, Mike? Folks are selling the dollar and buying gold. Do you see that? Do you hear that from your clients?
I'm hearing that, Paul. It makes a lot of sense. It's been the case, but a lot of the fundamental things we're hearing in gold, we pointed this out a little while ago. The problem is once prices shifts, all these things we hear about from demand, they come out of the woods. And then what happens is it usually shifts that supply-demand curve the other way, particularly when you rally at such high velocity and you put in peaks for years. So my prediction is this year in gold and silver, we're going to put in peaks this year. For years, I don't know how high the highs will be, but as a strategist, it's easy to say maybe start kind of be a prudent short in silver. The question is to stop, because I don't know how it goes. But by the end of the year, I fully expect it to be below $100 an ounce.
we spend so much time focusing on gold and, of course, even more on silver just because the move has been parabolic. What about the other precious metals like platinum and palladium? Are they getting caught up in the rise as well?
Oh, absolutely, Scarlett. Before we talk about Chinese demand, there's a lot of Chinese demand. Gold got expensive, so they started buying platinum, palladium, and silver. They got really cheap last year, and now they've caught up. Most notably, platinum. Platinum is it's basically a rare earth. It's the highest melting point of all the precious metals. But now it's getting expensive too with the whole space. So I've been bullish, so I just love the precious metals. I like to characterize them. They're a bunch of doves compared to the pigeons, a flock of pigeons in cryptocurrencies, an unlimited supply. But the doves are just flying too high now, the way I see it.
Mike, what are we doing here with gold? I'm seeing that inch higher here with the WTI back up, above 60 now, 63 and change here. Just all kind of within a range here, or how do you think about oil?
The Bloomberg Energy Index was down 12% last year, Paul. And if it's up 12% this year, imagine what's going to happen in the midterms. There'll be a sweep away from the incumbents. So I think that's the key thing to think about. We have a president who's motivated for energy prices. We saw what he's willing to do with Venezuela. Natural gas has popped up. If you look at that Jan contract, that's the apex. It's right around 5. It's basically right around that T-bond yield. So by the end of this year, T-bond yields, natural gas, crude oil should be lower. They're pre-existing trends, but also it's the motivation of our administration that wants them lower, and they have the means to do it. So I fully expect these prices to decline. I think crude oil is more likely to drop towards 40 than stay above 65.
All right, Mike McClellan, Bloomberg Intelligence, senior commodity strategist on gold. We talked about
56 to 61 is the
trend every day. It's just it's insatiable, this demand for gold, right?
Yes.
We had some headlines, which I thought was really interesting because I know you're a big golfer, Paul Sweeney, and that is that Live Golf, the Renegade Golf League, plans to sell stakes in franchises for the first time. It's looking to sell minority stakes in its teams, targeting valuations of up to
Okay, so there's a big move because of Bassett's statement that the United States is not intervening in the currency market to help with the Japanese. I still think they are, but the dollar did increase during that conversation. There's a little bit of a mean reversion right now. The Japanese yen right now is trading at 153.37, and the euro right now is trading at 119. Oil's trading at $63 a barrel. Natural gas is now trading at 3.8. Again, like I said, there's going to be volatility in natural gas because of this cold spell. On top of, with Trump making his move in Iran, it may shock the natural gas market, but natural gas is going to precipitously drop once we get past that cold spell. So just wait it out. The best thing to do is just keep on looking at the futures market and, look at it from a point of view of shorting the natural gas. Intraday trading for oil went as high as 63.52. It's trading at 63.11. All right. With that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. Super important. Not enough people are taking magnesium. It's important to take it as a supplement. It's going to help slow down the aging process. Vitamin C and magnesium will help to boost up your immune system, help with your brain function, and help with your skin health. Super important to take. You can stack them together, boost up that immune system and brain function. Magnesium also increases the efficacy of vitamin D3, so it's important to take during the winter season. So please go to my store, get the magnesium and zinc, and the vitamin C and magnesium. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose. It's going to help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. It helps to bring down inflammation and help to control your lipid profile. When you do that, at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. And when you bring down inflammation systemically, you're boosting up your immune system. So please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. So a great stack to help with brain function, to help with your immune system, to help with your cardiovascular system. Stack the vitamin C and magnesium, the magnesium and zinc, and the olive leaf extract. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, you get $5 off anywhere. All right, let's listen to Altimeter CEO, Brad, about AI trade.
7% of the fiber going into the ground in the year 2000 was being utilized. 7%. Today, it's 100% of the GPUs that are being built out are being utilized.
Right. So you said, I was going to ask you why you still like sort of the infrastructure, picks and shovels part of the AI trade. If you think it's going to really result in high ROI, why not broaden it into some of the beneficiaries?
It is broad. We have over $1 billion invested in OpenAI and Anthropic, large investments in both of those companies. We have large investments in lots of other private AI companies, and then the public markets. When I invest in Gemini, I'm investing or in Google, I'm investing in Gemini and AI. When I invest in Amazon, I am investing in AI. So those are the apps that are going to power, the growth for all of these major companies. I, as a shareholder, am glad to see them investing aggressively in compute. In fact, what I would tell you is they didn't invest aggressively enough over the last 2 years, right? If you look at Amazon, they have shortages they've talked about. Microsoft, shortages that they've talked about. And that goes to show you, as much as people want to criticize Sam Altman on my podcast, Sam Altman has been out in front for 3 years telling the world that we're walking into a compute shortage, and here we are in 2026 with a massive compute shortage.
Speaking of, are you going to participate in this next round? We hear that they're raising more money.
Yeah, so I mean, if and when, OpenAI raises more money, and I think there are a lot of people who would like to give them more money for their next round of financing. It'll likely be the last round of private financing ahead of their IPO. We're here celebrating all these kids' accounts. I want Anthropic and OpenAI and SpaceX to get public so we can put their stock into the accounts of America's kids. They deserve to share in the upside. A lot of flood in the world, fear and uncertainty about OpenAI. And if these were public stocks, everybody would say Anthropic's doing great and OpenAI is doing terrible. OpenAI just announced in the last few days that they've added $1 billion of API revenue in the last 30 days. The reality is the tsunami, the tidal wave that all these companies are surfing is so large, they're all going to do well. Sure, they'll compete one against the other, but OpenAI is doing great. Certainly there are things that I'm sure they know they got to do better. Same with Anthropic. But I'm excited to be a large shareholder of both these companies, and I'm also excited to participate in their IPOs over the course of the next 12 to 18 months.
Are they raising another $100 billion right now?
My expectation is that they will raise another large round ahead of their IPO. I think the company has talked about their intention to do it. You've seen reports out there about major companies like Amazon and SoftBank and Microsoft and NVIDIA that may be looking to participate. I'll let the company announce that, but I will just say this. When you look at the financials for the business, this is one of the most important companies and will be one of the most important companies in the future of AI. It is a great thing for America that we have the leading labs, the leading chip company in NVIDIA. Imagine America without NVIDIA. Imagine America without OpenAI and Anthropic. It's a great thing for this country that the leading AI companies and chips on the planet are here in America.
Okay, so you're doubling down on that. Even though there are questions that it doesn't has to spend a lot. I think another $100 billion reflects the fact that this is just going to be sold out. They have to borrow a lot. They have to do all these deals with customers like NVIDIA to get it done.
I was giving Sam an opportunity, as I shared with you. What I thought was increasing fear and uncertainty about OpenAI that was not warranted, okay? So here's the situation. They had reported they ended the year with over $40 billion of cash on their balance sheet. If these reports are true and they're going to raise another 70 to 100 billion, they would have over 100 billion of cash on their balance sheet. That is a fortress balance sheet. Now on the other side, how much are they spending? Well, a year ago, people thought that they were going to go build all these data centers that were going to cost $50 billion a pop. I haven't heard them break ground on any data center. I hear Microsoft building data centers, Oracle building data centers, CoreWeave building data centers, SoftBank building data centers. They're buying the tokens that come out of those data centers. And when they buy the tokens, they have revenue coming out the other end of that. So from my perspective, Sam got out there and he cajoled the market to build more compute. The market responded. They're building more compute, and now they have cut deals. They give them the option, right? They give them the exclusive right to buy the tokens that get produced by those buildings. They don't own the buildings themselves.
Finally, Brad, I just have to ask you, majorly in the news this week, are you responsible for the new tariffs on? Know that you sued the South Korean government. You're the stakeholder in Kupang. You think they've been unfairly targeted. Was this part of the friction that now lies at the center of the U.S.-South Korea trade negotiation?
First, let's just up level here for a second. For the first time in a long time, we have an administration that is saying enough is enough. Europe, you can't unfairly treat our companies like Meta and Apple. China, you can't unfairly treat our companies. South Korea, you can't unfairly treat our companies. America First is give our companies the same treatment we treat your companies. We're not discriminating against Hyundai when they want to compete in America, so they shouldn't discriminate against our countries. That is the principle that's at stake here. It's the principle that I support and agree with. And I'll let others take on, the tariffs and the Kupang fight. That's not what.
All right, I'm going to go to GBN News talking about Trump's deadly warning to Iran. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. This will help to bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, so you're detoxifying your body, you're boosting up your immune system, helping with your endocrine system. Detoxifying your body regularly will allow your organ systems to perform better, including your brain. So take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink it with filtered water, do this every day, and you're detoxifying your body. Super important. And also, if you have joint pain, muscle pain, headaches, bruises, you want to relieve the pain fast, take the Super Strong Relief. Apply it to your skin where the pain is, joint pain, even headache around your temples or your muscles in your neck and shoulders, or wherever you pulled a muscle, and that pain will be reduced or eliminated within 30 to 60 seconds. Please go to my store, get the Super Strong Relief, and apply it to that area that is bothering you, including your joint pain. Another important supplement to take is this very powerful neurostack. Now, a lot of people, they don't realize that overusing social media is making you stupid. Your attention span is reduced. Also, because of the crisis that we went through in 2020, people are having concentration issues. Please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. This will get rid of that brain fog. And what this will do is allow you to concentrate on tasks. Over time, what will happen is that your dendritic connections will improve. You'll have more connections between neurons. You'll think faster and have better memory. Please go to my store, get the Clarity Factor. This is a very powerful neural stack. It's super important to take. Drink it with filtered water.
Truth Social with a deadly warning for Iran.
Yes, the United States President says a massive armada is on the way, heading into the country with speed and violence. He added the next attack will be far worse than Operation Midnight Hammer, when the US launched strikes on Iranian nuclear sites back in June of last year.
Well, right now we're joined by our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what more can you tell us?
Well, it's just interesting to compare that statement we've just had in from Donald Trump the last couple of hours with what he said before Operation Midnight Hammer last June. Very similar language, because he said on the 12th of June last year, we remain committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. My entire administration, he says, has been directed to negotiate with Iran. What he's saying today is that while that massive armada is heading to Iran, that they're willing and ready to make a deal, using the exact same language he used before launching a very precise strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities with those B-2 bombers that flew out of the United States. It may not need to require that option this time, but it's very interesting to compare very similar deal being mooted and then a strike following soon after language. It does feel as though it's a matter of when, not if, for a US strike on the Iranians.
And of course, the Iranians have now put out a statement reportedly saying they don't want to negotiate, that they are ready to respond, not quite with fire and fury, but words to that effect.
Well, that's what they're implying, that they're ready to respond, but that is fighting talk from a country that has basically had its high and mid-altitude air defences totally obliterated by the United States.
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, Tally Money is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined
last year, and of course in that 12-day war with Israel, they only were able to respond with a gesture of missile strikes for the most part, rather than a full-on strike that could have really decimated any Israeli or American assets. Just even as we're speaking now, it does appear that there's more American firepower moving into the area, including a spy plane that's not often seen in Qatar, one of the US air bases in the region. We've got that USS Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier, now approaching the Iranian Gulf, that area as well, just off Oman. So there's been a noticeable increase, I think, in the arrival of US government military planes into the Middle East. But this build-up has been going on for a few weeks now. We've also seen the RAF last week move on fighter jets towards Qatar as well. 12 more fighter jets flew out of the UK towards Jordan last week as well. The assets are in place, really, if they want to do this. And in Israel last week, and continuing to their coverage this week as well, they keep repeating this line in the Israeli media, basically saying, our preparations are ready should there be an attack. Oh, we've got a few more preparations to make, but it's there now. A tiny more set of preparations have been concluded now. It almost feels as though in Israel they're itching for this strike to happen. There was some reporting a couple of weeks ago suggesting that Netanyahu didn't want it to go ahead because Israel wasn't ready. It seems that that's not the case. They were rather concerned that America wasn't ready, that it did not have sufficient firepower in the area to have what the president favours, reportedly, which is a decisive strike, enough to totally take out this regime once and for all, rather than to weaken it. Where would that strike? Well, IRGC commanders, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Ayatollah himself, 86-year-old man, repeating the strategy seen against the Iranian proxies such as Hezbollah, where Israel targeted very much its leadership first and foremost, and then its wider operations. It's still bombing in southern Lebanon now, the Israeli Air Force, trying to counter remnants of Hezbollah south of the Litani River. So it would be senior military and government leaders, which would then, according to sort of the hopes of the Israelis and Americans in the area, lead to a resurgence of those protesters who have sacrificed their lives. It's suggested perhaps up to 30,000 of them have died. And there is, I think, a sense of betrayal among Iranians. When you speak to the diaspora around the West, a lot of them saying, well, you told us that help was coming, that you were locked and loaded. That undoubtedly motivated people to take out into the streets to confront the Islamist military and security forces in Tehran and dozens of other towns and cities across the Iranian spaces, and indeed some of the proxy areas across that Shia crescent as well. So it inspired people to go out and stand up against the regime, and the help did not come afterwards. I think with Trump now talking about a deal, it's very interesting to compare the language he used last year before that strike, and we could see that repeat again.
Okay, so earlier we spoke to Major General Chapman, and he talked about the Chagos Islands now being used for. What is it that would happen there? How would the Americans make use of that?
Well, they've got B-1 and B-2 bombers that have flown out there in the past. When the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan took place, Diego Garcia was central to those bombing missions. A lot of the long-range bombing that took place launched out of that British Indian Ocean territory. It's a realistic possibility it would be used again, but the US has expanded its capabilities in the last 25 years since that happened, and they no longer necessarily need to rely on Diego Garcia as much as before, especially when they have a carrier strike group. Serious armada has been referred to just off the coast of Iran, and indeed the B-2 bombers that could fly out of the United States.
Although what we've learned with Ukraine and to a lesser extent with the Houthis is
it's asinine
statement that he made. If it was flying from the United States, it's going to take 15, 20 hours. Round trip is like 36-hour flight. So you need certain bases close to China, to the Middle East, to be able to have more optionality for an immediate strike instead of waiting. I mean, come on, dude. This guy, sometimes these analysts...
Asymmetrical warfare is now the norm. I mean, are aircraft carriers now the unsinkable fortresses that they were decades past? Perhaps not. Perhaps islands are actually now more important.
Yeah, and that's why we don't need an aircraft carrier in the Eastern Mediterranean, because we have Cyprus, Britain's own unsinkable aircraft carrier. But I'll just say to that point of the assets available, it's about sort of the number of Tomahawk missiles that they have and the counter air battery defences that the US has as well. The jets available on that platform would be enough to intercept any missiles that Iran fires back towards Israel and indeed US bases in the wider region. The RAF is forward deployed. When you look at the assets that we can tell are there, there is such a significant build-up. I can't see the Iranians being able to...
Before we let you go, when you say the RAF is forward deployed, could British servicemen be involved in this action?
Absolutely, yes. It's likely.
All right, Charlie Peters, thank you very much. We'll stay with...
Oh, wow. What's wrong with the Brits helping? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen is a month supply powder that you mix with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. But take it every day. This will help with your skin, your nails, and your hair health. Help with your joints and your musculature and your bone density. Really important to take every day. And you can stack it with the collagen supplement that I'll be talking about. But this is an important supplement. You can take it separately to take every day to improve your skin, improve your joint health, and improve your musculature and your bone density. It's super important. And collagen. Collagen is focused on remodeling and improving your joints. Let's say you have shoulder pain or elbow pain or wrist problems or knee issues, hip issues. You need to remodel those joints, all right? Especially when you get older or you have a sports injury. Collagen will help to use the collagen 2 to remodel the joint, and ACAN to cushion the joint. Collagen will also inhibit 2 enzymes that cause your joint to degrade. It will inhibit MMP3 and MMP13. It will also inhibit a enzyme that causes this phantom pain that happens with joints. And that is blocking EP4. All right? So collagen also helps to recruit and use glucosamine to help to remodel the cartilage, and chondroitin to help with the cushioning. So taking collagen is specific to joint health and remodeling and rebuilding. You can stack it with the collagen, all right? But you get other benefits with collagen, like skin health, musculature, bone density. So please go to my store, get the collagen, and get the collagen. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order, all caps, discount 5. And this is pretty powerful stuff. And as you age, you will start having joint issues. So please go to my store and start applying a protocol to improve joint health. All right, let's listen into, I want to listen into Iran is desperate. U.S. assets deployed as Gaza, Syria, and regional tensions escalate, by Jonathan Conricus.
Pleasure to welcome to studio Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and the former IDF International Spokesperson, and our Senior Middle East Correspondent, Ariel Osran. Thank you both so much. There is so much on the go. It feels like potentially the region is on the precipice of something. The regime at its weakest, reportedly since 1979. We're hearing about these aircraft carriers in position, as Mike outlined it, and the Supreme Leader reportedly is in a bunker, setting the chips in place for what exactly, Jonathan?
Well, good evening, Benita. I think what we're seeing is that most of the military assets that need to be in place for the U.S. to be able to take meaningful action against Iran are indeed in place. You spoke about the aircraft carrier group, but additional electronic warfare and communications planes are already in CENTCOM's area of operations, and they are gearing. They also signaled CENTCOM that today they're going to conduct, I believe it's a 3-day exercise in order to project force, which could be a ruse or it could be just preparations for the real deal. But it basically boils down to decision by the president when to strike and if to strike. I believe that the Iranian regime has done too much slaughtering, too much killing, and has been spiteful and disrespectful of the American president in such a way that makes it impossible for him to do what President Obama did many years ago, draw a red line and then allow that line to get crossed without any consequences. So I think that the days of the Iranian regime are numbered. Difficult to say when it will happen and how it will happen, but I think that the Iranians look quite desperate. We see a lot of posturing on one hand, showing videos of missiles and arsenals and a lot of strong rhetoric coming out, but then on the other hand, actually begging for diplomatic talks and for something to delay the anticipated American onslaught. So definitely a lot to look into. Maybe a word in about the current situation that is unfolding in Syria. Another ethnic minority being left to be slaughtered, for lack of a better word, the Kurds, at the behest of the Syrian regime. That's happening as well as we're speaking. The Turks and the Syrians have teamed up against them. And in Israel, to make things even more complex, ready for Iranian attacks. But of course, looking at the situation in Gaza, and I don't know if we want to get into the situation in Gaza if we will have time to it, but really looking at how complex that is and how far we are from where we need to be in terms of the day after in Gaza.
Obviously, a developing situation unfolding as we speak. Briefly, your assessment, your thoughts on the developments we're hearing right now.
Well, I hope that I'm wrong and that it isn't something very serious. I know that there are various organizations, Muslim Brotherhood, that are active in southern Jordan, various small cells of ISIS that are also active there. It could be a variety, and it could also be work seekers, even though Faran, the southern Araba area, is not an area that is frequented by work seekers. We see that in usually north of the Dead Sea. That isn't the situation here. So it could be something relatively serious, and we have to be honest, it is one of the least defended areas in terms of our borders, is where we have the least amount of available troops and assets. So it's a soft area. Hopefully, Israeli troops will get their hands on the infiltrators quickly enough without any more developments.
One can only imagine what this all feels like for the family of Ran Giveli, and the entire nation feels like family of Ran Giveli too. And to that point, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, the magnitude of this moment. There were so many who never imagined that all the hostages would come home.
We're going to skip over to MSNBC.
Such a real churn in the labor market. Any type of bubble could turn that sort of lack of churn into all-out net job loss. We've got a lot of big revisions coming. We don't know which way those will cut. They could cut in less favor of the current labor market conditions and paint a wholly different picture. And of course, that would be something that then would bring forward rate cuts if the labor market deteriorated unexpectedly. Otherwise, the Fed's just on hold here. I think it's still going to come down to the labor market.
Right. What's your forecast for unemployment dropping out? We just had a discussion with Giardini about that labor differential number we got at a conference board yesterday. Historically, pretty reliable leading indicator on what unemployment does.
Yeah. So, look, the unemployment rate, I believe, is still going to inch higher. The underlying details of why is it moving higher is going to be important. Is it simply that we're just not creating enough jobs to accommodate new entrants in the labor market? That's going to matter for the Fed. If it's inching higher because the economy is still strong enough to bring participation into the labor market, that's not going to be as worrisome. But I think the unemployment rate is just one factor that we have to look at. I want to know, how long is it taking people to get reemployed once they lose a job? Right? It's taking longer and longer. This is just not a very favorable labor market for employees, prospective employees, and it's not getting better.
Right. On the inflation side, nice piece in the FT today, looking at what 2-year break-evens have done since late last year, slightly on the rise. Some of the consensus on core PCE, if you roll in what we got out of recent CPI and DPI prints, might be the highest year-on-year since February of last year. How big of a concern?
I don't think it's a big concern at all. You got to, if I wake up in the morning and I put on my Fed goggles and I look at the world through their lens, which is what you have to do if you're a Fed watcher, then you're going to say, yeah, but, right? Inflation expectations are not unanchored. They've not been rising. There's not an expectation that inflation is going to remain this high going forward. And if you grab onto forecasts from the Fed's own staff and the regional banks and private sector economists, it all points to, once you make that annual lap around the base of that, of when inflation was rising again, right, that mechanically means that it's coming down later this year. So I think that's why you see bets for the next Fed cut really concentrating around coming no sooner than June. And I do think that's a risk. I think expectations for the Fed to wait until June are probably a little overblown. I think we should more properly recognize that there are risks on both sides, that they wait even longer or that they have to go sooner because of the labor market.
Interesting. We'll talk about personnel next time. Obviously, that conversation continues to inch along, Ellen. Appreciate the help today, as always. Good to see you.
Yeah, good.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, and bring down inflammation. When you do this regularly, you're going to improve your endocrine system, your immune system, brain function, and cardiovascular system. Super important to take every day. This is a month's supply. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. You can stack it with or take them separately. Omega-3, which will help with your cardiovascular health, bring down inflammation, and improve your lipid profile. Omega-3 also reduces the stickiness of your red blood cells to reduce overclotting. Vitamin B complex, super important to take, revs up your cellular metabolism. The first 4 B vitamins will help with the mitochondrial health. Those 4 B vitamins will help with the electron transport chain to boost up your energy levels, your ATP. And vitamin B12 helps to protect your neurons. So please go to my store, get the vitamin B complex, protect your neurons, rev up your metabolism, boost up your energy levels. Omega-3 to help with your cardiovascular health, and the heirloom barley to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off anywhere. All right, what's going on with the markets right now? The S&P 500 is at 6,985. Like I said, that 7,000 is a major resistance level, but once we break it, it will be a very strong support level. Oil is trading at $62.96, so just under $63 a barrel. Natural gas is trading at 3.875. This is probably tied into the news that's coming in about Trump threatening and warning Iran. Japanese yen is trading at 153.44. The Japanese yen has been weakening. The dollar has been strengthening based on the announcement by Bassett that the United States is not coordinating with the BOJ in terms of strengthening the yen. All right, with that, let's go to Bloomberg.
Its global sales at established locations did rise by 4% in the most recent quarter. We've been hearing so much about this strategy for a turnaround, and it seems as though maybe it could potentially be taking hold. And maybe take a look at the stock action so far this year. It's January 28th, and we've seen that the stock has risen about 17% so far this year. So that's a stark reversal from the 4 back-to-back years of declines that we've really seen for this company. We also know that the company has identified about $2 billion in cost reductions over the quote-unquote next couple of years.
I'll do a shout out for the breakfast sandwiches. They're pretty darn good.
Yeah, they have really good spinach frittata.
Yeah, there's plenty there. Plenty there to eat.
All right, I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
Next stock on your list.
Let's take a look at telecommunications. I've got my eyes on AT&T. That's ticker T. We saw that the company reported fourth quarter profit and revenue that beat analyst expectations. They're saying that this is all due to customers who subscribe to more than one connectivity service. We did see also that AT&T added more than 500,000 fixed and mobile internet subscribers in the quarter. That includes about 283,000 new fiber customers and 221,000 for its wireless internet product, which is known as Internet Air. So we're seeing shares of AT&T up by about 4.5%. Earlier up, seeing its biggest single-day rise in 1 year.
We're going to talk to John Butler, Bloomberg Intelligence telecom analyst, later to get the lowdown on AT&T and the wireless space. Yeah. Textron.
Yes, so this is actually the second biggest decliner by a percentage basis in the S&P 500 right now. That is ticker TXT. We're seeing shares down right now by more than 9%. This is after its profit view missed expectations. Essentially, we're talking about the fact that the company expects a 70% increase in capital expenditures. So clearly you are seeing Wall Street is not pleased with that news, and you're definitely seeing the stock action reflecting that sentiment.
Pitched them a convertible bond back in the day, got shot down.
Oh.
Yeah, didn't work out.
All right, for more conversations like this, thank you so much, Nora. Subscribe to our Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you want to build muscle, a great way to do it is to take Gladiator Barley, but it's dual purpose. This will also help to slow down the aging process by soaking up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, detoxifying your body and bringing down inflammation. When you do that regularly, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, and your cardiovascular system. Bringing down inflammation regularly at the neuron level will help the health of your neurons, so your brain function will be better. So Gladiator Barley is dual purpose. Do some resistance training, build some muscle, it'll slow down the aging process. And when you build up muscle, you are helping your body to control your A1C levels. So you're controlling your blood glucose levels. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle. This is super important if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. This is polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. This will help to reduce atrophy, super important. Do some resistance training, take the Myotrol. This will also help to boost up your mitochondria so you have the energy that you need to build and maintain musculature. Stack it together to get synergistic benefits. Gladiator Barley will help to build the muscle because it is a micronutrient protein. Myotrol will help with the gene expression. When you get older, your gene expression changes, so you're going to need to take the Myotrol. Now, if you're an athlete, you will also benefit from this. This is not just for people that are older. If you're an athlete, younger or older, and you need to build muscle for your strength, for your sport, take the Myotrol and the Gladiator Barley, and you will notice that you are getting the strength results that you need for your sport.
Interesting thing to look for when we get the minutes to see how the Fed felt about it when they had this meeting, because you had
inflation basically holding steady. Remember, the Fed uses the PCE numbers, and they really haven't changed in about 18 months. We're at 2.8%, and right now some analysts are thinking that the December PCE figures will show move over 3%, which would certainly be in the wrong direction. At the same time, the narrative had been that the labor market, weak as it was stabilizing. Unemployment went down in the last report. But then we had all these layoff announcements overnight. So which one is in a greater danger? Or are both of them stable enough for the Fed to sit still? Those are going to be the kind of questions that Powell faces today. And they need to explain to Wall Street what's going on.
Are we going to learn anything more from like a tea leaf perspective about who might be the next Fed chair? Will we learn anything today, Mike?
Unlikely. Scott Bessent was on television earlier today and saying only the president knows when he's going to make that announcement. And I don't think he's going to tell Jay Powell. So we aren't going to learn anything along those lines. Unfortunately, I know everybody's waiting for that.
Everyone's waiting for that. And, we know that there are 4 leading candidates here to be Fed chair. And Rick Rieder of BlackRock, I want to say his star has risen, but there's been a lot more chatter of late about how he's a contender. Explain what happened that, people are now saying that he's a possibility. I mean, he had a good interview. Is he a known quantity to this White House?
Well, what we're hearing is basically that this is essentially the same as a presidential campaign in that it's taking a long time. There are a number of candidates. So what happens is one candidate goes up in popularity in the betting markets, and then the media latch onto that person and discover flaws, and they fall back, and somebody else moves up. And that's kind of the process that we have been through. You remember both the Kevins, Warsh and Hassett have been the favorites at one point or another. And even Chris Waller was a favorite at one point. So we don't really have a view because this is Donald Trump. He's the only voter in this election. And his views are really hard to discern because, as Bloomberg has pointed out in a story recently, he's looking for somebody who may not exist, somebody who can guarantee that he's going to lower interest rates and who will be extremely loyal. Rick Rieder today in a Bloomberg story is noted gave a lot of money in previous campaigns to Democrats. Is that going to make the president unhappy? Nobody knows.
Mike, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Michael McKee, International Economics and Policy Correspondent for Bloomberg News, joining us. He's down there in D.C. He will be at the press conference today. Again, the timing here, Bloomberg surveillance, the Fed watch, the Tom Keenan and the surveillance team. That's 1:30 p.m. Wall Street time, radio and television. Then we'll get the statement at 2 p.m.
Yep, the decision.
And the decision, and then we'll get the press conference at 2:30. So we'll bring it all to you here. So we'll see what happens there. Mandeep Singh joins us. I haven't seen this dude in a while. He's been traveling all over the globe. He's going to Davos, rubbing elbows with the elite and doing all that kind of stuff. Who knows what he's doing? We got a lot of tech earnings. He's got to get back to work, folks. So we brought him back. Mandeep Singh, he's senior tech analyst. He runs all our tech research for Bloomberg Intelligence. Let's just start with what we learned last night, Mandeep. ASML, chip demand still big out there, right? I mean, that was a huge number.
A huge number, and look, the correlation between the capex growth and backlog growth for all these companies still holds. So with all the companies, TSMC, the memory guys raising their capex, well, guess what? It trickles down to someone like ASML. Same thing with hyperscalers. If they're raising their capex 40-50% for this year, it's going to trickle down to the likes of NVIDIA and Broadcom. So that's what the market is pricing in now, because that correlation has held up quite nicely over the past few quarters. I mean, the question is, what's priced in and how much do you anticipate in terms of growth going into 2027 and beyond? Because if you're having 2 or 3 consecutive years of 50% plus growth in capex, that's not sustainable. I mean, at the end of the day, these companies are spending all of their free cash flow. So at some point, investors will start questioning because the ROI is not proportional to the spend that's going on. And that is what I think everyone is trying to figure out when that will happen.
So the big question, as it has been since these companies, these hyperscalers began spending a lot, is what is the ROI on that spend? How does one go about determining that? How do you do it at BI?
So in the case of Microsoft, it's visible. Microsoft Azure is a $93 billion run rate business. Out of that, $20 billion is AI workloads and AI applications, and that's growing 100%. So you see that in their new ARR number for Azure in the report. It's going to be, $5 or $6 billion in new ARR. Now imagine how many software companies
Trump is talking right now. Trump is talking right now.
With every modest contribution, Trump accounts should reach at least $50,000 in value by the time the child turns 18 and could be very substantially more than that. With slightly greater contributions, the typical account will grow to $100,000, $200,000, and can even go up to past $300,000 per child. And we think the most likely cases in the $200,000, $300,000 range. The size and scale of this wealth will dwarf all government programs ever created to benefit America's youth. There's never been anything like this. That's why everybody's talking about it. Even really people that truly hate me are making this investment. One person hates my guts. He put $1 billion into it. They said, you must like this program a lot because you can't stand me. I said, I do, but I do like you more than you think. They liked me more in the last year than they liked me before. Although we had a great first term, we can't forget that we're the greatest economy in the history of our country, but this is blowing it away. So, every president, thank you. Every president in modern history has left our children with nothing but debt. But under this administration, we're going to leave every child with real assets and a shot at financial freedom. We'll ensure that Americans don't just end their lives with a nest egg, but instead all Americans will begin their lives with a beautiful nest egg. There's never been anything quite like this. I want to express my tremendous gratitude to a very special couple who believe so strongly in this vision right from the beginning, that they personally donated $6.25 billion. That's $6,250,000,000. Even the 250 is a lot of money when you think. I mean, to Nikki, do you hear that money? That's big even compared to wrapping all the money she makes. She said, she's hearing a number like that. She said, how many songs do I have to make to catch that? But amazing thing, $6,250,000,000 to fund Trump accounts for an additional 25 million children aged 10 and under. And that's Michael and Susan Dell, two incredible people. Where are you, Michael? Where's Michael? Stand up, Michael. What a great guy. What a great guy. I tell you, he didn't do it for his business. He did it, I guess, probably would have been better off not to. That's a lot. But you know what? I hope everybody goes out and buys Dell computers. My son, I told you, Barrett, he loves that computer. I don't know what the heck you're doing to it, but he likes it. But I just want to thank you very much, and Susan. It's unbelievable, really unbelievable what you've done. So Michael and Susan made this donation in recognition of America's 250th anniversary, because there's no better way to honor America's history than to invest in America's future. That's what they did. And this is perhaps the largest, one of the largest, certainly, but perhaps the largest private donations of all time. That's a lot, $6,250,000,000. And somebody did say that. A friend of mine, very rich, he's going to put up $100 million. And he said, think of it, the 250 that Michael has is a lot more than mine. And I haven't even talked about the $6 billion. But anyway, it's amazing when Michael can start off with very little money and build a fortune where he can, routinely make such a payment and investment in the youth of our country. Michael, you're great. Thank you, man. Thank you. And I also want to say hello to and thank some very special people that have been with my administration. They've really become friends of mine. On occasion, I have little arguments, but generally, I would say really good. And start off with a man who's doing a phenomenal job, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Scott, thank you very much, Scott. And he loved this right from the beginning, Scott, right? He saw this and he said, wow, what a great idea that is. This is, hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time they reach 18, but we can go 21. They can keep it in longer. But he saw this right from the beginning. He said, wow, this is great. And we have some other ideas that will be great, but this was one that just hit everybody. This was an easy one to think about. And again, that bill allowed us to do this. Otherwise, can you imagine trying to get this approved by Democrats and Republicans? Let's get together. We got it done. Also, a man who's made your life much easier, because those of you that are building plants and equipment so you can give your money, ultimately you're giving your money away anyway, no matter how much you make. But he's made it a lot easier, approvals for
President Trump speaking just in the room right next to me here in Washington, D.C. at the Trump Account Summit. He's touting the new accounts, basically, which were created as a result of the Big Beautiful Bill, talking about some of the benefits there, giving thank yous and shout outs to those that have contributed, including Michael Dell, who the Dell Foundation, Michael Dell and his wife, announced more than $6 billion investment into this, kids' funds, into index funds. Also gave a shout out there to the Treasury Secretary. I was watching the Dell stuff because, Carl, at one point, President Trump said, buy Dell computers. My son loves Dell computers. So commending Michael Dell and his whole entrepreneurship story and for getting involved in a program like this. We are expecting a number of announcements from corporates and philanthropists about joining this effort. And you just heard from Ted Cruz that he says it's a bipartisan effort as well. But it is now law, and tax filing season has begun. And so they're encouraging people to get out there and to check this for their kids.
Yeah, trying to make it as easy as possible, which is commendable. A nice little shout out to Nicki Minaj in the house as well, Sarah. When
She's here today, yeah.
Evercore's first reaction to Starbucks results, big move in the stock this morning, might be the start of a long-term rally. We'll talk about it. Plus some new comments from the CEO of GE Vernova to CNBC. That when we come right back.
They're on break here. All right. So the update on the natural gas futures 3.895. It's ticking up as we move towards the Fed announcement. And oil is trading at 62.96. Let's listen in to CNBC International about inside China's military purge.
First off, General John, the official government spin is not just that he was naughty and that he was caught being corrupt, but that he leaked nuclear secrets, Chinese nuclear secrets, to the United States, which in my mind, there's not much difference except that, for espionage of that sort, I mean, he probably didn't do it for free. There's probably some sort of exchange involved. What do you make of this?
Well, this particular piece of allegation is very difficult to verify because only the Wall Street Journal has reported this allegation. The Chinese official media obviously has not said anything about this. No other Western media has been able to verify this either. So I'm personally a little bit skeptical because nuclear secrets, what does it mean? China's definition of secrets is extremely broad. So we will have to wait and see what exactly happened regarding to this piece of allegation.
Yeah, and honestly, I guess we'll actually never know. But Professor, you've been thinking, reading, writing, and speaking about the comparisons between Taiwan and Ukraine. So let's go there. I mean, with General Zhang's removal, it only leaves two people on the CMC, Xi Jinping and the person who actually prosecuted the probes and also the purges, which makes a lot of people think, look, if that's the case, China is not just lacking any generals at the top who have any sort of combat experience, but basically they're out in no position at all to take any sort of aggressive military action against Taiwan, at least not in the near or even in the medium-term future. What do you think?
Well, I want to qualify that kind of assessment a little bit. Obviously, it makes it nearly impossible for China to mount on its own a very large-scale operation such as invasion, blockade, because that would involve the entire military. But we should not rule out gray zone activities, relatively modest or medium-sized military operations against Taiwan that can be undertaken by, just say, the Eastern Theater Command. So, if Taiwan does something that China believes to be crossing its red line, I'm sure there will be a military response. So I think even though the risks are lower today than, say, a week ago, the risks are still there, and they're considerable.
All right, Professor, your latest book, The Broken China Dream, talk to us about what this is all about. And, when I was thinking about just looking at the title, I'm wondering how much this has to do with the Chinese perspective to what the West thought, more than 20 years ago when China joined the WTO, and the West thought, look, this is great. We'll let them into our little community here. They can grow rich, and in time, they will become like us. Obviously, that's proven not to be true. What was the other side of this hope or dream, though, for Chinese?
Okay, there are two sort of lines of arguments I try to present in the book. The first one is that Chinese leaders in the post-Tiananmen era had absolutely no intention to democratize, to change the Chinese system. They, in fact, done the opposite. They implemented many stories to prevent organized opposition from emerging. They tried to perpetuate their one-party rule indefinitely. So this is why our expectation that economic modernization alone can change China is wrong. When you look at the historical record, that relationship is very complex. Economic modernization alone really does not change the political system. To change the political system, the political leaders in that particular political system have to change. And in the case of China, the political leaders, obviously from Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and now Xi Jinping, they absolutely have no idea, no intention to change the system. So now the second line of argument is that the Chinese leaders plan to be part of the West-led international order. In researching the book, I found evidence that Chinese leaders from Deng Xiaoping on down, they've been very consistent about their resistance to being part of this order. So Chinese leaders were actually quite transparent about changing this order. So the question is, why did the West not respond in time?
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating how some of the recent conversations really have played out, comparing what's going on in the U.S. and China, and perhaps coming from rather unorthodox leadership style of the current U.S. president as well. that China has got stability and perhaps being a democratic country sort of gets in the way of getting things done as well. What do you think about that debate right now?
Well, I don't agree with that assessment. I think in the U.S., what is happening is not that democracy is not working. Is that democracy inherently is deficient or somehow inferior to a dictatorship. The problem with the U.S. today is that democracy is not working as intended. So the U.S. also has a track record of correcting its mistakes. On the other hand, when you look at China, dictatorship really does not have a built-in mechanism to correct its mistakes. So in the case of the U.S., we say, well, the Trump administration, 3 years from now, you will be gone. In the case of China, can anybody say that Xi Jinping will be gone in 3 years or in 2 years when his term is up? It's impossible. So I still have a lot more confidence in the U.S. system than in the Chinese system.
And Professor, do you think, just going back to the latest military purge that you were discussing with Martin, do you think that this is an indication of President Xi Jinping trying to revive perhaps totalitarian methods to command the gun, or do you think it's really about sort of cleaning up something internal, some cleaning up of internal challenges that he was facing?
Yeah, the first point I would like to make is that Xi Jinping revived totalitarian methods 13 years ago when he came to power. He purged not just the military, he purged a lot of his colleagues. We're talking about something like 12% of the Central Committee members. That's a lot. He purged, before this round of military purge, he purged more than 100 generals. So this is not something new. This time, it is something new because we're talking about the wholesale purge of the high command. So there are a lot of different explanations. Why did he do this? There are really two. One is that he's worried about his power. That is, especially somebody like Zhang Youxia, the most senior general, has acquired too much power to be a threat to Xi Jinping. That sounds reasonable. But there's another line of argument or explanation that has not been emphasized enough, which I tend to believe put a little bit more value on. That is, this round of purge began shortly after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It really began in 2023. So if you put 2 and 2 together, you might explain this round of purge as Xi Jinping's concern that the military is, the Chinese military has the same corruption problem as the Russian military, because the Russian military proved to be incapable of fighting a big war. So Xi Jinping began to look in his own backyard and found a bunch of rot. So and then of course the Chinese military is really this cesspool. So the more you stir, the more you dig, the more corrupt people you find. So this is also a very reasonable explanation.
And Professor Pei, Jan has also been described as someone who can speak more candidly with President Xi, one of the few people left. Do you agree with that assessment? And what might it mean to have fewer of these voices in Xi Jinping's inner circle?
Yeah, well, we really don't know for a fact that he could speak more candidly with Xi Jinping. Even though I think his family and Xi's family have some close relationships, so we just speculate. In that system, I really doubt anybody can speak candidly to Xi Jinping, especially candidly enough to contradict his views. So at the moment, in the absence of real solid facts, we should be quite careful about what we say.
And I want to ask about any succession planning as well in China's party leadership. Do you expect any announcement soon on that, or any perhaps major personnel updates at, for example, the upcoming 2 sessions in March?
No, I think they make these updates mostly at the party planner, which is probably in late October or early November. So we will have to wait for a while because the party charter does not allow Politburo seats to be filled outside those planners. My speculation is that they're not going to do anything until the next party congress, which is November or October next year. So for a while, the Chinese top echelon will be short-handed. In terms of succession, I want to say, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to get back to General Zhang. You know, it's stunning, not because it's a purge, not just because it's a major toppling. I mean, this man was considered untouchable until just recently, right? But people are starting to draw parallels, and I wonder if you think, to a very major rift, possibly the biggest rift in the CCP, which happened, as you well know, 50 years ago, Mao and Lin Biao. Is it as serious as that?
I don't think so. I think the psychological shock is equivalent. That is, it came so suddenly, so unexpectedly. So that was, so I think the psychological effect is that when I happened to be living in China when the Lin Biao incident happened. But I don't think there is a political rift in the sense that a large group of people, very senior people, and a particular branch of the Chinese government was somehow plotting against the top leadership.
And Professor, maybe this is a twofold question. We're not supposed to do that on TV, but I will try anyways. So you were talking about the top echelon of the Chinese military being shorthanded for now. Do you think that this purge signals perhaps President Xi Jinping putting more priority on loyalty, political loyalty over combat readiness, especially regarding Taiwan? And also, what do you think Xi Jinping was thinking when we're getting the headlines regarding Venezuela at the kickoff of the year, the capture of Venezuelan president?
Well, the second one first. Obviously, we don't know. We can only speculate. I think the first thing he might do is to look at his own security arrangements to see whether there were any holes in it. In terms of loyalty and readiness capabilities, I think Xi Jinping would like to have both. But the problem is that it is hard to get both in the Chinese system. After this round, one practical difficulty he has is that we all know the Chinese military is thoroughly corrupt. So who can you actually promote to the top leadership as replacements without really knowing whether these people also brought the way to the top or whether these people collected or accepted bribes? I think that is his biggest problem at the moment, not whether these people can actually fight a war.
Turn great savings into great nights. The President's Day mattress sale is on now at Raymore Flanagan. Get up to $600 off Beauty Rest Black and Stearns & Foster and more. Don't miss the President's Day mattress sale at Raymore Flanagan.
All this tariff noise, a lot of people were expecting those to crater, you know, as costs rose for these retailers. And they've really done a good job at managing their pricing power, right? And pushing through those price hikes to consumers. Now, the question is, can the consumer keep absorbing this? And that's what we're starting to see a little bit in the top line as a whole for discretionary is top line is really kind of decelerating here. And we're seeing top line growth for the sector as a whole actually be half the S&P 500's pace, which is pretty weak. So really, it's a question of how much can the consumer hold up rather than if margins are going to hold up.
So what are the consumer discretionary companies, what are they doing here? Because, I mean, it seems like they've kind of been hit with a double whammy with tariffs impacting their cost structure to some degree, and maybe a weakening consumer there across the board, particularly on the lower end of the K curve. What have they been doing here?
Yeah, so we've really seen so far. So let's talk about the third quarter. we really saw a lot of pricing power be pushed around, right? So these consumer discretionary companies were able to maintain their margins by pushing some of the price hikes to consumers or pushing it back on the importers from some of these countries that are facing the tariffs. And in the fourth quarter, the question really is top line again going to start to deteriorate? And we've seen weak consumer confidence, weak consumer sentiment. The macro signals have really been suggesting that the consumer is pretty weak. We just haven't seen it really show up in discretionary yet, and that could start to be the case in the fourth quarter and the first quarter as well.
So in this kind of environment, does Amazon just get stronger?
So Amazon has its own tailwinds, let's call it, right? Obviously, they have their whole AI stuff going on and AWS and a lot of tech-related things. So Amazon's a bit different than the rest of discretionary. And if you're asking if they do get stronger, they have been kind of building market share within discretionary as
Right, separate from its tech ambitions, of course, but just within the consumer discretionary space.
Yeah, and that's kind of been a key kind of takeaway from the rest of the consumer, right, as well. You've seen Walmart really taking advantage of some of these weak consumer trends. You've seen Costco taking advantage of it, right? People are really, let's call it trading down, right? So they're not buying goods at higher prices. They're going to Costco and buying in bulk. They're going to Walmart, going to Amazon, where they can get these goods a little bit cheaper. And Amazon is certainly one of the bigger beneficiaries from that.
Michael Casper, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Michael Casper is the Senior U.S. Equity Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Speaking of discretionary spending, I went to Shake Shack yesterday. Penn Station.
And?
It did good.
How'd that go?
Good. I think the renovated part of Penn Station, the part they have renovated.
Wait, the one in the post office?
It's not in the post office, but it's half of the old Penn Station's been kind of renovated, and it's the one end.
I haven't been there in a long time. Yeah, that's why.
So, but anyway, it was good. I'm not a crazy Shake Shack fan.
How is it like Paul stays relatively thin with all this?
I don't think he eats Shake Shack on a regular basis. In fact, I don't see Paul eating almost ever.
Yeah, I have a couple goldfish.
He just has a cold thing of whatever.
So anyway, that's my review. I like Shake Shack.
Pepperidge Farm goldfish, by the way, not live goldfish.
That's exactly what we go.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's see here.
And now we have two excellent guests joining us to dive into the latest military purge in communist China and what it signals. Michael Lucci is the founder and CEO of State Armor, and Nathan Su is an investigative reporter for the Epoch Times. Thank you both so much for joining us. Michael, starting with you, diving right in here, how are you reading this latest series of investigations, purges in China, this time for the country's top general?
There are two things I'd say about this. First, there is real tension between Chairman Xi and his military. Obviously, he's purging nearly everybody in his leadership of the military. The reasons for that, I think that there's a lot to debate and consider around the reasons why there's that tension. But I would flag the second point I'd like to make here is there's pretty obvious propaganda being promulgated within the United States, in particular through the Wall Street Journal, about what might be happening in the inner circle of Xi Jinping. They're saying that he's selling nuclear secrets to the United States and some other conjecture like this. The lines in the Wall Street Journal are being rejected by pretty much everyone who's analyzing these issues. So there's real tension between Xi and his military leaders, but a lot of the narrative that's being seeded across the United States seems to actually be used to benefit Xi Jinping himself to consolidate power.
And Nathan, you have a unique perspective on this, having come from a military family in China. Now, with your reporting work to expose the Chinese regime's influence around the world, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think Xi Jinping is actually trying to replace the most of the Chinese government and party and military officials. That's what he's trying to do. What the situation facing him is very much similar to what's facing Joseph Stalin in the 1930s. You know, Stalin facing a lot of people that's left from the Tsar's era, while Xi Jinping is facing pretty much every aspect of the Chinese government, party, and military official who climb up the power ladder in the past 40 or 50 years of time after China opened to the free market and start their market economy. And in the eyes of Xi Jinping, and they are all corrupted to a certain extent, while Xi Jinping trying to lead China going back to the fundamental communist ideology. He's trying to replace a lot of them. So that's why we have seen in the last few years, Xi Jinping trying to actually encourage the fight, the power struggles among officials in different factions in China, either government or party or the military. So he can find a reason to either replace them or purge them as quick as possible.
And Michael, we've seen how certain nations put trust in negotiations with the Chinese regime, and some speculate that it could become the next future global leader. Do purges like this of two Chinese generals serve as a reality check of how unstable China's future under this regime really is?
Well, Tiffany, it's actually a really incredible example. So you have the Prime Minister of Canada talking about making a trade deal with Xi Jinping, as he is, as you're noting, purging his military leaders. But this is nothing new. If you look at the track record of Communist China since just the COVID era, they unleashed a pandemic on everybody. Wolf warrior diplomacy, hoarding PPE, attacking Taiwan, trade war all across the board. So they've been the source of global instability. They backed Putin's invasion of Ukraine. They backed the leaders of Iran. They backed the leader of Venezuela. So pretty much everybody who's causing trouble throughout the world is being backed by Communist China. And as we're mentioning here, they are purging their own leaders at the same time. So it's actually quite insane for global leaders, such as the Prime Minister of Canada, to turn to Communist China to make some sort of trade deal, which China has never honored any of their trade deals anyways. But this is occurring amidst a time of tremendous turmoil within China, and as the United States is fortifying against China across the globe.
And Nathan, your thoughts on if this latest purge is a reality check for people and countries who might see as Communist China as a future global leader?
Well, I think that in the leaders of the Western world, we need to clearly have a clear mind that we need to treat China as our enemy, not competitor. China has been involved with us, the unrestricted warfare, ever since the 90s. And while we have been dealing with China using the rules, regulations, legality, all these things, you cannot rely on these things to win a war. That just doesn't work.
And Michael, how should the U.S. be responding to this? Does it change the U.S. approach to relations with China?
I think that the United States should prepare for China to start a war in the Indo-Pacific. And then President Trump's national defense strategy points to exactly that, wanting to deter war through strength. And most specifically, he says he wants a denial defense on the first island chain. So that would include from Korea to Japan to Taiwan to the Philippines. So a denial defense so that China cannot invade one of those neighbors, cannot break out from the first island chain, and cannot really disrupt all global trade that goes through the Straits of Taiwan, South China Sea, and otherwise. So I think that President Trump is putting pressure on a lot of China's allies, obviously Venezuela, Iran. President Trump is working with NATO to fortify the Arctic, that's Greenland. President Trump's trying to get back control of the Panama Canal, putting trade restrictions on China and trying to get our allies to do the same. So I think that what he's doing is generally the right thing, which is get supply chains that are separate from China,
get allies ready to deal with China, and really fortify the first island chain against a potential invasion by China.
And expanding on that, Nathan, this is seen as the highest profile purge to date of senior military leaders inside China. It also involves the last two who had real war experience. How could that impact a potential Taiwan invasion?
Well, I think what Xi Jinping trying to look at is not a seniority and experience, and that's in the past that he has to choose, these people with top seniority, top, as more experienced, but he actually doesn't like them. So he find a way to try to replace them as much as possible, as quick as possible. It's really so after all these seniorities, experience not counting, then all these people being removed, then he will be able to reach out to the people who will really loyal and follow, his direction. So I think in the next 5 years, we will be living in the most dangerous time window that very much possible, the highest possibility that the war that will break out in the Western Pacific, And I think after 2030, that possibility actually will start going down. And after 2035, because China's the population aging really fast and their economy really go down to the toilet really fast. So I think after 2035, the possibility of going to have a war with China is going to be less and less. But the next 5 years is the most difficult time we have to deal with, and then we need to make our military men and women in service better equipped, better trained, and fully ready so we can defend the peace and try to avoid a war.
Lot at stake for sure. Michael Lucci, Nathan Sue.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the turmeric. This will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Ashwagandha root will control your cortisol levels and help with your blood glucose levels. Lignans will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, help with your endocrine system and your immune system. When you stack these together, they're a very powerful stack to slow down the aging process. Why? It's really simple. By bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you're reducing stress on your tissues. And your tissues, your organ systems will perform better. Your immune system will be boosted up. Your endocrine system will be in homeostasis. And by bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're improving your cardiovascular health. When you're bringing down inflammation and reducing stress around your neurons are healthier. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the turmeric, ashwagandha root, and the lignans. Very powerful stack to boost up your immune system.
FX, we're going to lower our capital intensity, and you're going to see a lot more free cash flow through, and they're going to be able to fund hopefully some dividend growth after that and increase the share buyback.
Yeah, I'm looking at the dividend yield for AT&T, 4.6%. For Verizon, it's almost 7%. For T-Mobile, a little bit less at 2.19%. John, where do the telecoms stand when it comes to this rotation out of big tech, looking for some cyclicals, looking for parts of the market that haven't been overbought?
So it's a good question, Scarlett. I always say telecoms, particularly the dividend payers like AT&T and Verizon, are bond proxies to a degree. I think sentiment has been pushed around a little bit by the fact that we have new CEOs of both Verizon and T-Mobile, and these guys are going to be looking to make their mark. Verizon on Friday is going to set out a new strategy set by Dan Schulman, who is the new CEO there. So there's been a little bit of concern, or more than a little bit of concern, that the competitive intensity in wireless is going to pick up as these new CEOs look to make their mark. And I think that has led to some of the pressure, particularly on AT&T, though, again, this morning, I think they put a lot of those concerns to rest by reiterating their fiber plans and laying out new free cash flow guidance.
John, on the competitive land front, where are the cable companies these days?
They're struggling, Paul. I mean, they're at a technology disadvantage in that they're offering broadband over those legacy coaxial cable networks. They're doing what they can to upgrade the technology and increase speeds on those networks. But at the end of the day, fiber really is a superior product to everything else on the market. And fixed wireless access, which has been offered by the telcos, has been a very popular choice given the fact that it's an easy setup, it's over the air, so there's very little problems with it. It's pretty much problem-free as broadband goes. Over time, it sort of has a headroom problem. It can't offer the same speeds as fiber, but through it all, cable is sort of flying underneath those two products, sort of, trying to compete with what is a legacy product in the market.
John, did we learn anything from AT&T's results regarding iPhones and consumers signing on for the latest version of the iPhone?
So, great question. It's very interesting. AT&T over-indexes to the iPhone. They have a lot more users than Verizon or T-Mobile because they had an early exclusivity deal when the iPhone first launched. They were asked about the foldable iPhone that's rumored to be coming out next year and whether that's really going to move the dial for them. Their answer to me was interesting. I didn't expect it, which is they've been tracking the performance and the sales of the foldables that they have available on the network today on the Android side. And their expectation is that we won't see a huge bump in iPhone sales next year with a foldable model. I think time will tell. I actually think foldables are going to resonate well with people. And Android isn't always the best read through there. I think it's a different kind of user that's on the Android phone versus iPhone, but we'll have to see in the fall.
All right, John Butler, thank you so much. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Telecom Analyst on AT&T earnings. The number 3 wireless provider being the first of the big telecom companies to report this earnings season. And we are, of course, waiting for the Fed decision at 2 p.m. I say this as if we think something unexpected is going to happen. It's not. We're going to get no change in interest rates. But nonetheless, yields are moving slightly higher in anticipation of that.
This was Al Jazeera 2 hours ago.
TurboTax locations are now open in your neighborhood. So, hand off your taxes to an expert today. Now local experts do.
U.S. President Donald Trump has again warned Iran he will launch an attack if Tehran doesn't make a deal. In a social media post, Trump said a massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose. He says it is a larger fleet headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln than that sent to Venezuela. Hopefully, he says Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons, in all caps, as you can see, one that is good for all parties. Time, he says, is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. They didn't, and there was Operation Midnight Hammer, a major destruction of Iran. The next attack, he says, will be far worse. Well, earlier, Tehran denied President Trump's claims that it had requested negotiations with the United States. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said diplomacy cannot take place under military threat.
Our position is precisely that diplomacy exercised through military threats cannot be effective or constructive. If they want negotiations to take shape, they must abandon threats, excessive demands, and the raising of irrational issues. Negotiations have their own rules. They must be conducted on an equal footing, based on mutual respect and aimed at mutual interests.
Well, we have correspondents covering this story from the US and Iran. First, we go to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Hockett in Washington, D.C. Kimberly, so a ratcheting up of the rhetoric there from President Trump.
Yeah, this is something that Donald Trump has said repeatedly in recent days. The threat of the Armada, the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is now in the Middle East area in those waters. This is something that the U.S. president has tried to ratchet up in terms of pressure. And essentially what the U.S. president is saying with this latest threat is that Iran needs to agree to a deal to limit its nuclear program and to prevent the development specifically of nuclear weapons. So what we know is that the U.S. president is using past U.S. action against Iran as the leverage and the threat to get Iran to the negotiating table. He has also said repeatedly in recent days he believes Iran wants to make a deal, but he wants to see that deal made imminently, and that's why he is, in essence, turning the screws to put on the pressure.
Right. Ali Hashem in Tehran, how is this being viewed there, this new threat by the American president? How will the Iranians be receiving this?
Well, this threat comes as just part of this sequence that's been going on over the past days. We've seen the military build up in the Arabian Sea, and of course, a lot going on behind closed doors. The mediators are trying their best to come out with a solution because the situation right now is really very serious. Now we're hearing from Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister, Mr. Ali Abadi, saying that Iran's priority is not sitting with the United States, rather having a 200% readiness to face any attack. This is a few minutes ago. Also, we've heard of several phone calls today, and it seems a lot is going on the diplomatic side, a lot of attempts to try bridge the gap, which doesn't seem to be, till the moment, bridged. The Iranian foreign minister received calls from the foreign minister of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. These calls are all in this sequence. So what we're hearing from the Iranians, readiness to fight and also readiness to talk whenever the negotiations are proper and they are not the kind of dictations of them.
Yeah, and Kimberly, as Ali mentioned there's a lot of diplomacy going on. Is there any indication in Washington that there is some talk happening behind the scenes to try and de-escalate the tensions?
We've known for...
There are moments you remember all your life. Abercrombie and Kent. Life will travel.
They said they had a flexible culture. Turns out they meant cat flexible, clingy, demanding, always invading your personal space. Next time, search Glassdoor for jobs that fit your vibes.
We've known for some time that the Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, or at least his negotiating team, has been working with counterparts to try and de-escalate. Whether that is currently happening right now is not clear. What we also are unsure about is the exact terms of the deal that Donald Trump is looking for. There has been no text that's been released, but we do get an idea broadly of what the United States is looking for from Tehran. And specifically, it's to end its nuclear ambitions, to stop it from enriching uranium to weapons grade. We know it's looking for robust verification in the form of inspections. And we also know that it's looking for a halting of its ballistic missile program, as well as an end to the support for its regional proxy forces. So the U.S. president has been relatively specific on what he's looking for broadly, but again, those very nitty-gritty details, those granular details, are still somewhat vague.
Ali Hashem, so we heard there what the U.S. might be looking for from Iran, from Kimberly, including the end of its nuclear ambitions. Is Tehran likely to make any concessions on any of those issues?
Well, the problem is that there are 4 issues that are on the table. The ballistic missiles issue, limiting the cap, putting a cap, and also limiting the size of the arsenal. On the other side, the nuclear issue and stopping enrichment towards 0%, which is in practice already happening because Iranians aren't enriching uranium anymore for now, since the US-Israeli attack. Also, another main condition is that to curb Iran's regional influence and to stop posing threat to Israel. Now, when it comes to the ballistic and Israel, it's very complicated. The Iranians see the ballistic program as their own only defense. This is how they are defending their country. This is what they've been saying, and this is what helped them during the last war. So giving up this program will leave them without the umbrella. For the nuclear, they're ready to talk, but they're not ready to give any kind of a concession that takes them towards a 0% enrichment. This is a red line, except if they decide to drink the poison chalice.
Ali Hashem in Tehran, Kimberly Harkett in Washington, D.C. Thank you both for your reporting. We'll come back to you, of course, for all the latest developments on this story. Now, let's take a closer look at the U.S. military buildup in the Middle East right now. The Navy has deployed the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which is now in the Arabian Sea. The carrier operates up to 70 aircraft, including FA-18 fighter jets and surveillance planes. Its nuclear-powered system allows for long-term deployment without refueling, and it's accompanied by 3 guided missile destroyers capable of attacking targets far inland and defending the aircraft carrier from air or naval attacks.
Don't miss out to get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and accurate insights. Like, share, stay ahead.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. You can read the label on my website. This is a month's supply. Take it every day. You can mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk. But take it every day. I mix it with hummus, but you can mix it with hummus or applesauce, yogurt, any way you want. But take it every day. This will target multiple systems. This will help with your cardiovascular system. This will help with musculature. This will help with brain function, rev up your metabolism, increase your energy levels. And over time, you're going to be slowing down the aging process. Your immune system will improve. Your endocrine system will improve. This is very important to take every day. This stacks really well with C60, and it's part of my core protocol for anti-aging. Now, what's the whole anti-aging protocol? It's very simple. The foundation, multivitamin with the probiotics. The first pillar, max 35, max 14, or cleanse to boost up your immune system. The second pillar, C60, to soak up free radicals. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And Boomer Boost to rev up your metabolism and increase your energy levels. That core is going to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost. You can take it separately, but you will get a synergistic benefit if you stack it the way I just told you to. This is the BBC, 8 minutes ago.
At Rochester Institute of Technology, we champion creativity and innovation, push boundaries, and move the world forward. Join the problem solvers at
We start in the US, where President Trump has warned Iran that time is running out for it to negotiate a deal on nuclear weapons. He said the next attack would be far worse than the US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities last June. The warning came in a long post on Truth Social. Let's take a look at some of it. It says a massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose. Hopefully Iran will quickly come to the table. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. Well, Iran state media says the foreign minister has not been in contact with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in recent days or requested negotiations. Tensions between the US and Iran are still high following the Iranian government's brutal crackdown on protesters. USS Abraham Lincoln has arrived earlier, the aircraft carrier in the Middle East. And speaking in Iowa overnight, President Trump hinted at the military buildup in the region.
And in June, we obliterated Iran's nuclear capacity in Operation Midnight Hammer. You saw that. People have been waiting for 22 years to do that, and we were right at the end. They were about a month away from having a nuclear weapon. We had to do it. And by the way, there's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
Let's bring in Mikey Kay, former strategic military planner and host of the BBC Security Brief. So the Truth Social post from President Trump, Mikey, talking about this armada that is heading towards the Middle East or has now arrived. What do we know about it?
Well, I mean, he's using the term armada. What he actually means is the carrier strike group, the CSG, and at the center of gravity of that carrier strike group is the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is a Nimitz-class carrier, and it's huge. And the weaponry on there, the aircraft on there is significant. We saw something similar on Venezuela, but that carrier is surrounded, Lucy, by a lot of warships and submarines, and we can see the carrier there. This carrier is the center of gravity of pretty much the US military effort. It's not the only thing that the US has. It's got home basing, and on the security brief this week, we're really taking a deep dive into what military assets are there. But this is the center of gravity of what he's talking about on this armada. Now, it's a massively strategic asset. So those warships that follow it everywhere are basically providing a layered air defense system for it, because obviously the US, anything that happens to that carrier would be a major significant problem for the US. And in terms of intelligence and location and what Iran is trying to do, right up there on their intelligence feed, will be trying to understand where that carrier is accurate enough so they could feed any GPS data coordinates into any ballistic missiles or what they want to throw at that. And that's what Iran are doing at the moment. And we saw that yesterday. We saw a long-range Iranian surveillance drone just south of the Straits of Hormuz, and it will be looking at where that carrier strike group is.
President Trump talked about Operation Midnight Hammer in his Truth Social post, Nike, and referred to the major destruction that was already done to Iran, and then said the next attack will be far worse. Do we actually know how much damage was done during that last US operation?
Well, I mean, the primary target was the lifting of Maduro, and we know that was successful. And we covered that on the security brief a couple of weeks ago in terms of the components that went into that. And those components are no different, Lucy, to what will be required now. So if the US were looking at a lift on the Ayatollah, that would require, as it did with Maduro, a significant amount of intelligence. You can split those down really into three things. Human intelligence, so we know that the CIA had an asset inside the Venezuelan government. You're looking at imagery intelligence, which effectively comes from drones using cameras. And then you're looking at E-links, which is electronic intelligence. And that's basically building up an electronic picture. SIGINT is a big part of that, signals intelligence, Lucy, where you can listen in the phone calls. And that's all about getting the location and the predictive patterns, called pattern of life, of what the primary target would be. In this case, it would be the Ayatollah. But there are so many other options, Lucy, outside of taking out the Ayatollah. It could be softening up surface-to-air defense systems, taking out ballistic missiles so they're no longer a threat to Israel. There's all sorts of courses of action. We call them in strategic military planning courses of action that the US will be looking at right now, and not one of them would be off the table.
Okay, Mikey, thank you so much. Mikey Kay joining us there. The full scale of the casualties in Iran after the government's brutal crackdown on protesters is still not known, but one human rights group based in the US has now confirmed that more than 6,000 people were killed in the unrest this month. The regime has imposed an internet blackout, but during brief moments of satellite coverage, the BBC has managed to speak to several young Iranians about their ordeal. Our correspondent Caroline Hawley's report contains videos from the crackdown that you may find distressing.
The images emerging from Iran paint an ever more horrifying picture. Witnesses say security forces fired live ammunition from motorbikes and rooftops. They speak of massacres, a bloodbath.
No one was harmed and no one clashed with the security forces. But on Friday night, they still opened fire on the crowd. We all know someone who was killed in the protests.
One human rights group has already identified more than 6,000 of the dead, almost all protesters.
Think about it.
Dozen.
Think about it. Thousands of people are killed, supposedly, in Iran. Where are these individuals that are Democrats protesting against the Ayatollah killing his people? No, they're protesting ICE, while ICE is trying to round up illegal aliens.
Simply bystanders, and more than 90 were children, and the counting has barely begun. It's investigating reports from its activists on the ground of another 17,000 deaths.
I think we're looking at systematic mass killing on our hands. I mean, we have looked at preliminary evidence that shows us that there are bodies in morgues that have medical equipment on them, and yet they have bullet holes in the middle of people's foreheads.
Security forces have also raided hospitals searching for injured protesters, and among the tens of thousands arrested are doctors who treated the wounded. This surgeon reported to have been beaten up when he was detained from his home. No wonder many of those injured are too frightened to go to hospital. This woman was treated at home by volunteer medics after she and a friend were shot.
People helped us and we got into a car. I said, just don't go to a hospital. In the following days, we found doctors who looked at our wounds and gave us antibiotics.
Among those killed, some faces stand out, like that of this influencer known as Baby Rider. Her family is said to be under pressure from the authorities to say she died in an accident on her bike. But a close friend told the BBC the 19-year-old had been shot by the regime. One young woman who'd gone out onto the streets in hope and didn't come home. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
But you have the liberals in America that care more about illegal aliens than actually a secular society in Iran that wants freedom. Strange how that works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the supplements that I offer so you don't turn into a crazy liberal. Resveratrol is a supplement that you should be taking. It'll soak up free radicals, help the health of your mitochondria, boost up your energy levels. This will help with youthful gene expression, get rid of cells that are in senescence. This will help the health of your basal layer for your skin, and it stacks really well with C60. So please go to my store, get the resveratrol, slow down the aging process, boost up the health of your cells, and increase your energy levels. And again, this helps with youthful gene expression. Please go to my store and get the resveratrol. Take it every day. All right, what's next? Crazy. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg here. They're gonna be coming back with balance of power. I want to play France 24. They released this 45 minutes ago about Trump.
Chevy trucks are as dependable as the Chevy people who drive them. They don't need permission to get going. They all have that little extra.
President Donald Trump may now have backed away from his plans to seize Greenland, but after weeks of transatlantic tension, it is still a major issue for European leaders. So much so that earlier on today, the French President Emmanuel Macron described the turbulence as a strategic wake-up call for the continent. Now, he made those comments as he hosted the Greenlander and Danish leaders at the Elysee Palace.
Welcoming you both here today is an opportunity for France to reiterate its solidarity with Denmark, its commitment to your sovereignty and territorial integrity, and to reaffirm to Greenland and the Greenlandic people our full support. In view of Russia's stance in the far north, China's economic presence, and the strategic consequences of this rapprochement, we agree on the need to strengthen our defense posture in the Arctic. Recent events confirm that the situation in Greenland is a strategic wake-up call for the whole of Europe.
With me now, Philip Turner, foreign editor, to talk a bit about that meeting today. What do we know about these discussions, Philip, and specifically what were the Danish and the Greenlander leaders trying to get out of this?
Right, there's no secret to the fact that the action by Donald Trump and his pledge to want to take control of Greenland, many thought by force until the Davos Economic Summit where he backed down on that, has shaken up the world order, and particularly that between different NATO countries, between the United States and the other NATO countries who now look at the United States as being a possible aggressor against a fellow NATO country. So the meeting in Paris today was to underline the solidarity between the Greenlanders, the Danes who have control of Greenland, and the other members of the European Union. And Emmanuel Macron has been one of the strongest supporters of action to stand up to the United States, to stand up to Donald Trump, saying that the more that one panders to him, the more that one goes in Donald Trump's direction or tries to placate him, the more Donald Trump will be a bully. The only thing that he stands ready to look at and take action after is when Europe stands united in the face of the United States, and that's why he's backed down. So it was an underlining factor by all of the countries taking part today, the two countries plus France, to say that we have to stay in solidarity with each other. A couple of other points that were important to underline, I think, also is the respect for international law, also security issues in the Arctic, particularly the threat from China and from Russia, and the economic and social development of Greenland in the future, and possibly the setting up of more EU bases there with EU troops on the ground to dissuade the United States from any view they might have to try and take control of Greenland in the future.
And Philip, is there a feeling, even though, look, Greenland no longer feels like quite such an imminent threat, that actually the problems that Donald Trump poses for Europe really haven't gone away?
There's no doubt that all of the leaders present today, yes, Frederik Nielsen, the Greenland Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, the Prime Minister of Denmark, and also Emmanuel Macron, the French President, are all worried about the fact that Donald Trump is completely unpredictable and can change his mind. No one really knows exactly what was discussed. At least we journalists don't know the details of what was discussed between the NATO leader and Donald Trump at the summit in Davos, and why Donald Trump backed down afterwards on his claim to want to take hold of Greenland, certainly not by force anymore. And there are only ideas about the fact that this may lead to increased US bases in Greenland in the future, but something the US already has the right to do. Remember that the United States has asked, or particularly Donald Trump has said, that he was interested in taking control of Greenland since the end of his first mandate back in 2019. He was already talking about it. He sent his son, Donald Trump Jr., to Greenland last January with Charlie Kirk. And then there was a visit by J.D. Vance to Greenland later on last year. So there's certainly no, I think, doubt about the fact that Donald Trump has still got his eyes on Greenland. He's taken them off there for the moment due to the conflict in Iran, maybe due to what's been going on in Venezuela, and also to the riots in Minneapolis. But I think there's definite concern in Europe that Donald Trump may come back again and say that he wants Greenland, and we'll be back to square one with more threats of tariffs, and eventually the US trying to take control.
All right. Let's listen to Bloomberg talking about Trump and Iran.
Armada to the region was to protect those protesters and prevent the regime from cracking down even further on them. But now he's suggesting that he's shifting back to the nuclear element and pushing for a permanent nuclear deal. So what that tells me is that there is a lot of credence we should be giving to these reports and indications we have that there's a lot of diplomacy going on in the region. We know Iran wanted to resume some of the negotiations and restart talks with the United States after those June attacks basically suspended any talks on its nuclear program. So it does seem like there's some sort of tentative thing happening here where there is a potential for a new round of conversations. And then you have Trump falling back into his very familiar role of carrots and sticks. Obviously, you can't get a much bigger stick than the threat of another U.S. military attack. So whether something is imminent, I mean, that certainly is the suggestion. Wouldn't be surprised after Venezuela, but at this point, we're just still very much in a wait-and-see mode.
You know, it's interesting because after those initial strikes, or the initial strike on Iran, in which we brought the B-2 bombers over there, attacked Fordo and the other underground installations, the president said that Iran's nuclear capability had been completely and totally obliterated. Why would we need a nuclear deal if that was the case?
Well, it's a great question that the Iranians are also asking, because, Chris, they say they never intended to have a nuclear weapon, and this nuclear program was for peaceful purposes only. Obviously, a lot of skepticism about that, though U.S. intelligence had also determined that Iran was not making a breakout for the bomb. But what we do know is that despite those strikes by the U.S. last June, Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium remains essentially intact. And we had the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, essentially saying a few days ago in an interview with Bloomberg, actually, that they could restart their program. It might take a little while, but the ability to do that had not been totally taken off the table. So obviously, take the president's argument that the nuclear program had been completely obliterated with a grain of salt. But it seems in some ways like maybe there's some tentative conversations happening, and the president's looking to head off another confrontation, another potential need to attack the nuclear sites that would essentially put paid to his claim that that program had basically been wiped out.
Got it. Fascinating. In our remaining moment, Nick, the president says this armada is bigger than the one we had off the coast of Venezuela. Should we expect a blockade of oil tankers? And is it actually larger?
Yeah.
The Jerry Ford's the biggest aircraft carrier in the world.
Well, the Pentagon has not actually disclosed numbers, so we can't really say whether this flotilla is actually bigger. But the thing with this administration is they have so pushed beyond the bounds of what we would have normally expected. I mean, that attack on Venezuela, capturing Maduro, essentially rewrote the rules of the game in a lot of ways. So with that in mind, it's hard to rule anything out, whether it's an attack or a potential blockade, to really put the squeeze on Iran's oil trade, particularly with China, where they gain a great deal of revenue.
Yeah, Nick, it's great to see you. Be safe over there, and thanks for the update, as always. Nick Wadhams, live from London, reporting for Bloomberg here, and when we learn more, of course, we'll bring more to you. A big good day to Bloomberg's Matt Miller, who's joining us on his lunch hour, not on the air, but he's always in the background of our conversation. We appreciate the insights, Matt. He's about to turn to the markets here. It's Fed Day, and we are flat right now, and I guess that's the idea, right? Everyone's waiting to hear what happens at 2 o'clock, and more importantly, maybe 2:30 when the news conference begins. But hey, we had S&P 7,000 a little earlier. This is an historic day in the markets, right? Well, the S&P is now down 8 points, but Michael Regan is with us, Bloomberg News managing editor for U.S. equities, live from the shop in New York with his read on the markets. Michael, I wanted to compare notes with you for a couple of minutes, just about what we're hearing here, what the sentiment is in the market as we get rolling for real in the earnings reporting season. We had some pretty good results today. Breadth has been quite strong. there was a nice pop at the open, and we're going to start rolling out the Mag 7 later. How are you feeling about the market here, especially with your eyes on what's happening geopolitically and in Washington?
Yeah, Joe, as you pointed out, we did hit that 7,000 mark. Now, sometimes you can run into what's known as resistance at a big round number like that. For whatever reason, there are a lot of sell orders that just tend to cluster at those levels. So that could be a temporary resistance or a more medium-term one. We'll have to see. But I do think the earnings on deck for the rest of the day and into next week are really enough to put any sort of technical considerations like that round number aside, especially today. We'll have Microsoft and Meta Platforms, the owner of Facebook and Instagram, reporting. Next week, we'll have Alphabet and Microsoft. So we'll really get to the heart of the AI trade, Joe. And I think that, geopolitics aside, I mean, obviously the Iran tensions and the president's social media posts earlier this morning did give a lot of people pause, perhaps contributed to why we backed off of that 7,000 level and are trading flat to a little bit down right now. But these earnings reports are so important, and I think really will determine the state of play and the direction of travel going forward.
Makes a lot of sense. ASML blew the doors off today, right? We're seeing lots of love for the storage companies. At what point will investors become sort of reconvinced on this AI trade? Is it when NVIDIA reports? Who rings the bell on this where it's safe to go back in the water?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, the first reports we'll hear are from some of the big spenders, not the companies really earning yet on the AI trade, not the chip makers, the Micron. We will hear from SanDisk, a memory maker, tomorrow night, so that'll be a big one. But I think the question is, between Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, and Alphabet, we're talking about $500 billion in planned capex from those four companies alone this year. Now, last year, early in the year, the market really rewarded these big aggressive capex plans to really invest in AI technology. Towards the later quarters that they reported, it was more of a kind of show me the return on investment from all this spending. So I think that's, the market will be first looking for any updates to that capex. Do any of these companies actually plan to spend more or perhaps cut some of those capex plans? And I think what will be crucial will be how the market reacts to that. Obviously, any upgrade to the spending would be good for your chip makers, your NVIDIAs, your SanDisks, your Microns, anyone really that stands to be a beneficiary of that. I think the big question is, will the market reward aggressive plans by the spenders? Some of them, obviously Amazon has a big cloud business, Microsoft and Alphabet, Google do as well. Meta, not so much. So it's really turning into a sort of stock by stock and sort of a lot of discernment going on as far as, are these wise investments these companies are making? Obviously, spending is going to be good for, the companies selling the chips, building the data centers and all that sort of thing. But I think for the spenders, investors are really going to start to look for what the potential ROI is on all this, Jim.
Well, and it all starts this evening for the Mag 7. I'll tell you what, I mean, the rotation, or at least the breadth, has been fascinating. For every Seagate, have you seen Seagate up 20% today? You get a GM. And I guess that's the way this is supposed to work. Mike Regan, thank you so much. Happy earnings season. Let's stay close with a lot more companies to report here in the days and couple of weeks ahead. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. We'll assemble our panel next. Mayor Mamdani wants to soak the rich to it.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C as a antioxidant. You take a teaspoon a day, every day. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, and you can also get it in extra virgin olive oil. C60 needs to be in an oil for proper absorption. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. It'll soak up free radicals, help to boost up your immune system, help to improve your endocrine system. Your brain function will improve because you're reducing stress and allowing your mitochondria and your neurons to produce ATP. Therefore, they're healthier, and you'll have better connections between neurons. C60 is very important for your cardiovascular health by soaking up free radicals and keeping down inflammation. You're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. This will also help the health of your basal layer for your skin. So your skin will be healthier. You'll notice the effects of this within 2 months if you haven't taken it before. You'll notice that you have more energy, your immune system and your endocrine is performing better. And by taking it every day for a year, you will visibly look younger. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60. Now it's really important to get the max benefit, stack it with other supplements that I've been talking about. In addition, it's a holistic approach. The anti-aging protocol is a holistic approach. It's proper diet, proper exercise. You need to do cardiovascular training, about 35%, 65% resistance training, do some stretching and balancing exercises to activate the cerebellum. Drink filtered water, stay away from processed foods and sugary foods. Control your blood glucose levels. Get proper sleep. So you're detoxifying your central nervous system and consolidating memory. Learn new things, read, write, talk to people, stay away from doom scrolling on social media. Have some spirituality or mindfulness so you are putting your body into parasympathetic mode. When you apply this holistic approach with proper diet and all these other modalities and proper supplementation, you're going to slow down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order, all caps, discount number 5. Click the link in the description of this video and all my videos to get to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's really simple. And take the supplements that I'm taking to slow down the aging process. That's the end of my broadcast. Like I said, the 2 big events right now are when will we hit Iran and the cold spell that's in the United States, how that is perturbating the energy markets. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening. That's the end of my broadcast for today. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.